starts with you. Facts still matter. It starts with you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Glad you're here. Happy hump day. Happy what the fuck Wednesday. Thanks for being here. We know you got many choices to make every single day, and we're super grateful that you choose to spend some time with us. So thanks. You know the drill. Tapping is clapping, liking is loving, sharing is caring. Please consider joining our team. Gifting goal today, as always, help us get to and stay on the FYP. We continue to be suppressed, so we have a lot of people tell us they don't get the notification that we're live. So thank you for finding us. Thank you for being here. Head on over to the link tree in my bio. You'll find information there on the Do Something Tour. We're still raising money. Thank you to everybody who's donated so far towards our 25K target. Also, items in the merch store, including this one, brand spanking new Do Something merch. In fact, that's the front. It says we're listening on the top. This is what it looks like on the back. I think you'll like it. Thank you, Sam, for designing that. That's available in the merch store. Appreciate you guys. You can find the link to that. It's Facts HQ, or you can find it directly at factsstillmatter.site. Also in the link tree, you'll find the link to our Discord. If you've not yet joined our Discord, please consider doing so. It's free to join. We just ask that you go through the verification steps. That'd be great. Also, a lot of other information in the link tree as well, including information on the Do Something Tour Instagram page. You can certainly follow us along there, and then just check out all the other cool stuff that's over there. We appreciate you guys being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. It is Wednesday, March 25th. Just a couple of programming notes. No normal show on, is my mic low? I don't think so. Mic seems like it's okay. I had to turn it up a little bit. My mic is low? I don't think so. Let me just check something. Hold on. Volume is low. It's good. Sounds fine. Okay. Audio's great. All right. Thank you. No normal show on Friday. Traveling to New York for the No Kings rally this weekend. So I don't really know exactly what Friday morning's going to look like. My flight is early, which is the case. Now, the TSA, by the way, the TSA website, we're going to get into the TSA, and we're going to get into the Trump and the Republican government shutdown in a little bit this morning. We got a lot to cover on that topic, but TSA has a website. You can actually go and check out your particular airport. Anyway, you can go to the TSA's website and you can check out wait times at your particular airport if you're planning on traveling. It's bad, but it's not as bad from what I've been researching and reading about. Busy airports are busy. You know, like Atlanta and airports in New York and O'Hare in Chicago and LAX, airports like that are always busy. Could you wait a little bit longer? Sure. But, you know, that's bound to happen. Let's keep in mind that Democrats are attempting to work with Republicans from a bipartisan perspective to fund TSA, to fund Coast Guard, to fund the teleporting agency, FEMA. So we'll get into all that. Just a couple things before we start today. When all hope is lost, when the skies are dark and you think there is nothing, there's no hope, enter baseball. Baseball season starts today. Whether you're a fan or not, it is a changing of the seasons. The Yankees play in San Francisco against the Giants. That's the only game today. Full schedule of games start tomorrow. So I figured, why not start the show with something a bit inspirational? If you've never seen the movie Field of Dreams, arguably one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion, here you go.
Ray, people will come, Ray. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have, and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
They'll walk out to the bleachers. Sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines, where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game. It'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, They'll have to brush them away from their faces.
Ray, when the bank opens in the morning, they'll foreclose.
People will come, Ray.
You're broke, Ray. You sell now or you lose everything.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
Ray, you will lose everything. You will be evicted. Come on, Ray.
Not saying.
That's right. You're not selling. Great movie. One of those movies that it's immortalized. I get goosebumps. All kinds of connections. All kinds of the feels for me. You know, I played baseball as a kid. I played in college. I had aspirations at one point. Point is that it's Americana, and it certainly connects us. I mean, again, generationally, right? So in honor of Women's History Month, somebody made this comment. I thought I would talk about the Women's Pro Baseball League. It's a professional women's baseball league in the U.S. It'll be the 5th American Women's Professional Baseball League after the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League from 1943 to 1954, the National Girls Baseball League from 1944 to 1954, the International Girls Baseball League from 1952 to 1953, and the Ladies League Baseball from 1997 to 1998. Co-founded by Justine Siegel and Keith Stein, the league is planned to commence play in 2026 with 4 initial teams representing 4 cities across the U.S., Boston, New York, L.A., and San Francisco. Robert and Robert Stadium in Springfield, Illinois will serve as a neutral venue for all games played during the inaugural season. The league was founded in 2024 with an aim to elevate the visibility and proliferation of women's baseball by establishing a path to professionalism for college and amateur players. It has no association with Major League Baseball. Maybelle Claire, Cito Gaston, Digit Murphy, and Ayami Sato assisted in the league's initial development. The league's competitions played during the summer will consist of a 4-week regular season, 2-week postseason, partitioned by an all-star game. Games will last 7 innings and be played with aluminum bats. Teams will consist of 15 to 25 players and be restricted to a total salary cap of $95,000. The league intends to broadcast its games on a national network instead of regional sports networks. So there you go. Happy Women's History Month and hat tip baseball, because as of today, everybody has World Series aspirations, but the Yankees suck. Sorry, but it's true. If you know, you know. So thank you guys for being here today. I appreciate you. All right. I guess probably the place to start is some really, really good news that came out of Florida last night. In case you weren't paying attention, we've been tracking these special elections, right? And the trend line has been constant flips. It's okay. We can agree. We can agree to disagree. So we say, bye, Steve. I get it. You all understand. I mean, look, I can't help you with that. I mean, I was born with it. That's my birthmark. I don't know what to tell you. Anywho, we've been tracking these special elections since Trump took office, and the trend line continues. Last night, Florida House District 87, which is Palm Beach County, which includes Mar-a-Lago, Democrat Emily Gregory defeated Republican Trump-endorsed candidate John Maples, flipping that seat from Republican to Democrat by 2 points. So again, as a reminder, please do not think that your vote doesn't matter, because it does. It does matter. That election, I think, is very telling. 1, it was a Trump-endorsed candidate. And 2, it's a Trump-endorsed candidate. And 3, it's a district that Trump lives in. Not only that race last night in Florida, but there was another race. That was Brian Nathan. Brian Nathan defeated Josie Tomko, flipping that seat from Republican to Democrat. That's Florida State Senate District 14. That's in the Tampa area. So these things continue to happen. And then back to the election in Donald Trump's backyard. Of course, the president has had some very strong things to say about mail-in voting, including language so direct that he wants it included in the SAVE Act, thus disenfranchising more voters. Then, of course, we had that situation in Mississippi where the RNC sued, claiming that mail-in ballots, unless they are received by Election Day, becomes potentially invalid. Supreme Court has heard that case. We'll see where that goes. But again, back to the Mar-a-Lago district that a Democrat won last night in Donald Trump's own backyard. Funny how the president rails against mail-in voting.
President Trump has cast a mail-in ballot in a special local election being held today in Florida. He's used the method before, in 2020. And yet, Trump continues to rail against the practice. Just yesterday in Memphis, the president referred to mail-in voting as, quote, mail-in cheating.
You know, brought to my attention today that we're the only country that does mail-in voting. Mail-in voting means mail-in cheating.
But it was far from the first time the president has suggested getting rid of voting by mail.
We, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots.
The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. When the state is for mail-in voting, that means they want dishonest elections, because that's what that means.
Then we should pass voter ID. We should pass no mail-in voting. We should pass all the things that we want to pass to make our elections secure and safe.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case from Mississippi yesterday involving certain types of mail-in ballots. A current law allows some mail-in ballots to be counted after Election Day. NPR's Ashley Lopez reports.
14 states plus D.C. and some U.S. territories count mail-in ballots that are received after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked on time. The Republican National Committee argues this is an illegal practice because Congress set an election day. They argued that means that all voting and receipt of ballots end that day. However, Mississippi officials argued voters submitting their ballot in the mail by Election Day complies with federal statute, even ballots that aren't received by officials until after Election Day. Members of the court's conservative majority appeared to be skeptical of this argument, though 2 of the 6 were tougher to read. Liberal members of the court suggested, however, that it is up to Congress to set rules on how states run elections. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
A decision in the case is expected by summer. I'm Corva Coleman, NPR News. For more of today's news, be sure to like and follow.
It's a great point, Paige, that Harris won Palm Beach County. They should have seen that trend line, but they weren't paying attention. Again, the endorsement of the president up until recently has always been a pretty solid endorsement. President Trump, that is. Not anymore. In fact, a lot of candidates, if I were them and I was, if I was a strategist for them and the president offered an endorsement, I might consider declining it, unless you are in a bright red district. But even that isn't necessarily true anymore. Remember the number. You guys remember the number that I gave you? See how much you guys pay attention. Remember the number I gave you, the margin in elections? Who's been paying attention for the past few months? See if anybody knows that number. Do you remember what that number was? 13. Thank you, Bruce Wayne's mom. 13 is the number. Yes. That number, 13, seems to be the range in which seats can be flipped, because you see districts all across the country. I think about, again, Afton Bain in Tennessee's 7. She flipped that. She didn't win the seat, but she moved the needle from the right to the left by 13 points. And then you're seeing it in state houses. You're seeing it in mayoral races. You're seeing it in Supreme Court seats. So anything that's within 13 points based on the trends that we've seen may be in play. So they're talking about, state houses, and they're talking about governorships, and they're talking about state senate seats. And then how does that transfer to Congress? When you make these predictions, typically speaking, you're looking at swing districts often, like it goes back and forth between Republican and Democrat. And you generally don't look at states or seats that are winnable outside of that 7 to 10 range. All of a sudden, that changes the map. Instead of a 15 to 20 point margin or 15 to 20 seat pickup for Democrats, that could potentially go bigger. Who knows? But I'm just saying this is really, really good news. And how ironic, thank you, Paige, how ironic that the president just continues to vote by mail, right? That is the ultimate irony, that he continues to vote by mail while railing on mail-in voting, which then leads us to the government shutdown currently. But first, as a reminder, this is day 96 of the federal government violating the law by not releasing everything connected to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. We've got some more reporting on that we'll get into today. I want to make sure that we're not forgetting that. I said we would cover it every day, and we'll cover it. Some days we'll have more news than others. We do have some additional information that Julie K. Brown, who writes primarily for the Miami Herald, she is someone who absolutely should win multiple Pulitzers because she has been on these stories, unpacking a lot of the financial crimes, all these things that don't necessarily, of course, get covered by the legacy media. We cover it. That's been our commitment to you. So anyway, where was I? Oh, the government shutdown. So this is where we sit. This is a little bit complicated. I'm going to try to bring you guys through this. So there is tentative. I'm going to say tentative. There was some negotiations that happened between Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans. They had more or less agreed on funding everything with the exception of a continuation of ICE on the enforcement side. That would include, DHS funding with the exception of ICE enforcement. There was a supplemental last year where ICE funding was continued, which means ICE agents, if they show up at airports, are getting paid, standing shoulder to shoulder with their TSA colleagues who are not getting paid. Long story short, Democrats and Republicans had come to an understanding that, yes, we are in a position now where we can pass this legislation. The president has said no. So that does a couple of things. That shows the country that the president is not interested in funding TSA, in funding DHS, in funding FEMA, the teleporting agency, if you know, you know, and the Coast Guard. Because the agreement was there. There were terms. Republicans keep pushing to say, we're going to include language connected to the SAVE Act. Democrats are like, no, we are not going to vote for that. We agreed in principle on funding these particular programs connected to DHS so we can get TSA workers paid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Exactly, Tommy. This is directly from Project 2025. We went over it yesterday, right? About how they want to privatize TSA, privatize prison, privatize ICE, privatize detention centers, privatize TSA, privatize Social Security. All these things are connected to Project 2025. Now, some can say, they're never going to agree to fund this. And then all of a sudden you move in contractors who take the position of federal employees, thus cutting more jobs and allowing more and more people to become rich. I don't, sure, we can make that connection, certainly. Long story short, we are still here because the president does not want to sign this bill. So that brings us to potential options in the Senate. We're going to talk a little bit today. We're going to get into what's referred to as reconciliation. I know what it is. I kind of had to go back and just sort of refresh my memory. So here's where it sits. Democrats want new restrictions and reforms on ICE, use of force rules, warrants, accountability after recent fatal incidences. Republicans want to fund DHS without limiting ICE enforcement powers. So that's the break, right? So that's what the Democrats are standing on. Listen, we will fund this, but we're going to need restrictions. You're going to have to make sure that we're addressing use of force rules so it's consistent, using judicial warrants and not administrative warrants, accountability, especially investigations, allowing investigations to happen. By the way, Minnesota has now sued the Trump administration for not allowing state-level investigations. We'll get into that in just a minute. So that's really the standoff when it comes to ICE. So part of this would say, okay, let's peel that out. We can solve that problem a little bit later. ICE is still getting funded based on that supplemental from last year. Let's peel that out. We've got agreement on everything else. And there was agreement. There was a bipartisan group of senators, both on the Republican and Democratic side, who presented this to John Thune. John Thune went to the White House and Trump said no. So if you are a TSA employee and you are a Trump supporter, the reason you're not getting your paycheck is because of the president. There was bipartisan agreement. Democrats and Republicans would have signed off together. The president could have signed it, and people would be getting paid. Coast Guard, FEMA, et cetera. Again, Democrats want those restrictions. The GOP proposal would fund most of DHS, but cut or exclude parts of ICE. Democratic position will be no funding without reforms written into the law. And then the White House wants to include the SAVE Act. That's not going to happen. Okay? So this is the shit in politics that people can't stand. Right? So where does that sit? So if this, we'll be watching this today because apparently there's going to be another vote. We'll be watching this today because if this does get across the finish line without the ICE reforms, or I should say without the additional ICE funding and without the SAVE Act, again, the president wants to include a ban on mail-in voting. He wants to address, men and women's sports, all these kinds of things, which are not, it's got nothing to do with this bill at all. And we're going to get into that in just a second as to what reconciliation actually means and how we can address it. So the idea is to find compromise. Now, the Senate, also referred to as the world's most deliberative body, was established for compromise. That it's built for that, right? We've lost that, but it's built for it. So here we are. We have an opportunity to pass legislation that would help a lot of people, not only the people who are affected by not getting paychecks, but the traveling public, consumers. It's becoming to be springtime. It's spring break for many places. The airports are bogged down. People are not getting paid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the question then becomes, what happens next? I think I've got somebody who's interested. I'll bring you up in a second, sir. All right. So that then brings us to reconciliation. So reconciliation is one of those tools that the Senate and the House has that will avoid, in particular, it avoids the filibuster in the Senate because it's specific to budgetary items. The Senate parliamentarian, is a person who's been in this position, I think, since 2012, worked for numerous administrations. Typically speaking, it's a nonpartisan individual. They just look at the Senate rules. They interpret what the Senate rules are and they say yay or nay. So they've said yes and no to to legislation introduced by Democrats and by Republicans. It's an important position. It's a person whose name escapes me. I've got it someplace. I'll find it for you. Okay. So this is how it works. This is how reconciliation works. The reason I'm bringing up reconciliation is because if the Democrats and Republicans can get the president to agree on funding everything else, like we discussed, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard, et cetera, all those kinds of things, and then they can carve out the ICE component, Republicans will attempt then to pass it via reconciliation. And they'll only need a majority. They won't need 60 votes. That's the difference. All right, so Congress first passes a budget resolution, not a law, no presidential signature necessary. This sets the targets for taxes and spending. So the reconciliation is connected to budgetary, which is why it's going to be problematic to try to pass the SAVE Act because it doesn't have a financial component to it. The mail-in ballot things doesn't have a financial component to it. So in an attempt to try to squeeze the SAVE Act in through budget reconciliation is not going to work. All right, it's just not going to work. Republicans know they don't have the votes. They just don't have the votes. You don't have the votes. Yes, I'm gonna explain to you about being insolvent because that's related this morning. Thank you. All right. So the way this would work is if they can get this piece of legislation signed and get everybody paid, then they will revisit the reconciliation process to try to address what the president wants. The resolution then tells specific committees that you're either going to cut spending or raise revenue. That's more or less the umbrella for the parliamentarian to look at. Is this going to have a budgetary impact? Are we going to be increasing spending, cutting spending, increasing revenue, cutting revenue? That's what the parliamentarian is going to be looking at. Each committee then writes its portion, combines into one reconciliation bill. This is where reconciliation is different. Simple majority, 51 votes, no filibuster allowed, debate is limited, usually less than 20 hours, and it ends with a rapid fire amendment process that they refer to as vote-a-rama. So all the committees who want their hands into this will go back and attempt to, pass whatever they have purview over through their own committee process. Then they all vote on it. It's dirty, it's messy, but this is what the Republicans are left with because they can't get the president to agree to get us out of this Republican-led government shutdown. They're going to have to survive what's referred to as the Byrd Rule. So I'll explain to you what it is. The Byrd Rule is a procedural law of the United States Senate that governs the budget reconciliation progress. It's codified as Section 313 of the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974. It restricts reconciliation bills to provisions that directly affect federal spending or revenue. It's Adopted in 1985 at the urging of Senator Robert Byrd, it ensures that the fast-track budget process cannot be used for unrelated policy changes. It was created after early reconciliation measures became vehicles for wide-ranging policy changes. The rule sought to preserve the integrity of the budget process. Byrd argued that the reconciliation's limited debate and simple majority passage were being misused to pass controversial non-budget legislation. By defining and banning extraneous matter, the rule maintained the Senate's deliberative character while keeping the reconciliation focused on fiscal goals. Here's what it says. This again, section 313B1 of the Senate rules. It identifies 6 types of materials barred from reconciliation. No effect on outlays or revenues, increases spending or reduces revenue beyond a committee's instructions, falls outside the reporting committee's jurisdiction, budgetary impact merely incidental to non-budgetary aims, increases deficits beyond the covered fiscal years, and then alters Social Security. So it's going to have to survive the Byrd rule. They refer to it as the Byrd bath. All these kinds of things will be thrown in there, and the parliamentarian's going to say that does not apply here, because the SAVE Act specifically regarding changing the way in which people can vote, unless the federal government decided to say we are going to add a component of this, and we're going to provide this financial resources to the states to get everybody in their states a passport or whatever that might be. That might be something that can be squeezed through because it has budgetary impact. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So you've heard about what the Byrd rule is. A provision is struck if it doesn't change spending or revenue, has only incidental budget impact, increases the deficit outside the budget window, usually 10 years. The Senate parliamentarian, that person would then be the decider. It's a yay or nay. Now, likely, John Thune is a Senate, he's a rules guy. He gets it. He's probably already had a conversation with the parliamentarian to say, what are we going to slide through here? So he knows going in what's likely to pass and what's likely to not pass. And I'm sure he's heard from her that SAVE Act, the elements in the SAVE Act as it's written, it's not going to happen. What can pass through Senate reconciliation? Tax cuts, like the Tax Cuts and Job Act, the big beautiful bill, that passed through reconciliation. Again, only needing a simple majority. Healthcare spending changes, climate energy subsidies, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, and then deficit reduction packages. Those things all passed through reconciliation. What cannot go through reconciliation would be pure policy changes like immigration rules, for example, voting rights, those things, because they don't have the budgetary impact unless, as I described, they want to add a financial component to it where the federal government is going to fund states, which then would raise revenue and or raise taxes. Therefore, that would be subjected to the reconciliation. You follow me? You guys tracking? Okay. Again, what cannot be pushed through reconciliation? Regulatory changes without budget impact, and then anything violating the Byrd rule, as we've discussed. Typically 1 to 3 reconciliation bills per fiscal year. So they're into a new fiscal, technically, so they can use the reconciliation. Normally you get 1 to 3, but you can make concessions there. It still must pass the House and the Senate. So even if they do this reconciliation, it's still going to have to go back to the House. So they're a long way off from fixing, from the president's demands. Long story short, the SAVE Act is not going to pass. They just do not have the votes as it's written. Now, like I've said before, if, for example, the president and House Republicans and Senate Republicans negotiated, if they negotiated something to say, we will provide resources so that every American citizen can get a passport. If they said that and they did not put the financial barrier like the poll tax in place, I think people would support it. I think it would pass. The issue is the constitutionality or the lack of constitutionality the SAVE Act does. It restricts people. So we kind of sit in this really weird space right now that we have to fund TSA, the Coast Guard, and the teleporting agency, also known as FEMA. If you know, you know. That's going to get complicated because the president has made it very clear that he doesn't want to sign it. He stated it on the record. Yeah, I'm not interested. Thank you for that. That's cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, don't forget about our gifting goal, friends. And please, if you're not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel or to Twitch, please consider subscribing both of those. You'll find the links to those in my bio. So thank you for that. So I'm not sure where this is going to go, quite frankly. The expectation was, I thought there was enough movement, and it seems like there's some pressure from Republicans to say, Mr. President, we've got agreement on this, okay? We can get this done right now, and you can look like the hero. They should stroke the ego a little bit. You know, glaze the donut, as they say. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to sit. Lawmakers, again, could try to fund parts of the DHS through reconciliation, but funding would have to go through reconciliation, would have to go through the parliamentarian review, and then any policy changes to ICE would likely be blocked by the Berta rule because that doesn't have, again, a financial component to it. It's just a policy change. So there's a long way to go here. What would be likely allowed through reconciliation would be salaries for TSA, for ICE, for CBP, for FEMA, Coast Guard, operations funding, airports, borders, cyber. It passes because it's direct spending, core reconciliation territory. Border and infrastructure spending, border wall barriers, surveillance tech, hiring more agents, that would likely pass as well through reconciliation. Immigration-related fees and revenues, visa fees, processing fees, fines or penalties tied to immigration, likely. Disaster funding for FEMA, the teleporting agency, emergency response funds, climate resilience funding, it's clearly budgetary. And then changes to benefit eligibility tied to cost. If written as a budget savings, for example, limiting eligibility categories tied to spending, things would get a little bit tricky there because it's really on the line. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the parliamentarian. What doesn't necessarily get passed, they call this a gray area, ICE detention policy tied to costs, limiting detention length, changing detention standards. It could pass if it was written as a cost-saving measure. Budget impact would then be primary, not incidental. That's a weird one. What's not going to pass? ICE enforcement restrictions, requiring judicial warrants, limiting who ICE can detain, use of force reforms, oversight boards, accountability structures, meaning that Republicans are not going to get that through under reconciliation. That is something that the Democrats have said, we want this. You need to have, we are willing to fund this, but you have to agree to requiring judicial warrants, limiting who ICE can detain, use of force reforms, and then oversight boards with an accountability structure. Again, people have to look at that objectively. That is not unreasonable. We're talking about part of the issues with ICE has been the tactics, right? I personally, I don't think we need an agency like ICE. I would support getting rid of ICE as it is and then creating something new, perhaps enforcing Border Patrol, allowing law enforcement to provide some of these functions. But ICE as it is just doesn't work. That's a different conversation. But it would seem like that would be a reasonable compromise. We just want to reform it. We're willing to spend the money on it. We just got to reform it. Another likely block would be immigration law changes, asylum rules, deportation standards, border processing rules. Again, something that would be subjective to the parliamentarian review, doesn't meet budgetary guidelines, not going to pass. Civil rights protections for migrants, due process expansions, again, policy, not budget. Structural agency changes, reorganizing DHS, changing agency authority, almost always ruled out of order, again, out of the reconciliation model. So Republicans could do, this is what they could do. They could fully fund DHS operations, they could boost border security spending, and they could increase enforcement resources. What Democrats cannot force via reconciliation is they can't get ICE reforms, enforcement limits, and or accountability mandates, meaning that if they were to agree to reconciliation, even if they wanted to support it, they wouldn't necessarily have to, but they're not going to agree to those things. So there's the standoff. Everybody tracking on that? So it's really, it's a complicated process. There are Senate rules to avoid the filibuster. It has to be very specific, though, from budgetary and not policy. And what the president wants and what a lot of people who support the SAVE Act want is a policy change. You're talking about changing how we vote, changing how people register to vote, what the rules are regarding all kinds of things. And there's all sorts of other pork the president wants to add about bans on men and women's sports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all this kind of shit. It's not going anywhere, okay? It's not going to happen. It's not going anywhere. The question is, how far are Republicans willing to push? Hold on a second. Goodbye, my love. Be safe, be kind, be gentle. I'll see you tonight after work. Okay, I love you. Bye. Okay. Again, I don't know exactly where this is going to go. It seems to me that the Republicans are going to have to blink because they know that SAVE Act is not going to pass. So the question then becomes, is there enough support? So if you're talking about a veto-proof majority, you're probably not going to get it in the House, but you could get it in the Senate. So if you get agreement and John Thune goes on the record and says, listen, we've got support from our Democratic colleagues, and the Democrats have said the same thing. We'll fund all this shit. In fact, they've introduced like 7 or 8 bills to fund everything but ICE because they want reforms. Is there agreement there? Is there agreement? And again, the right-wing echo chamber has said the Democrats want to support illegals. There's nothing in this language that does anything like that. It's never been the case. It's just a question of changing the way in which ICE does business. Now that Mark Wayne Mullen is the head of DHS, are there going to be policy changes? I don't know. I don't know. I think there is enough of an appetite there to at least consider doing something a little bit differently. I just want to find this for you real quick because I wasn't even going to play this today, but I figured I would now. Speaking of Mark Wayne Mullen, do I have this? Mark Wayne. Remember we discussed this? Anybody with 2 names? You have to be wary of. Mark Wayne, Billy Joe Jim Bob. Yeah. Do I have this? You guys can be like, what? This guy? This guy is the new head of DHS. Do I have it? Maybe I don't have it. Sorry about that. Then I'm going to play some sound from, here you go. So this is the new chief of DHS, friends. This guy is the person who's now in charge of DHS. This was a while ago. He made this particular speech, but I want you to hear what he has to say.
We must be willing to discipline our kids too. Right? You got to discipline them. And I know that sounds funny, but you do. One thing I was raised by the fear of a belt.
The fear of the belt.
Okay? And I deserved them, Dad. I did. Right? But I never seen a man that could take the belt off so fast, double it up, and still hit you. I don't know how in the world he done that. I tried it, and I just can't. But that fear was enough to keep me straight. Right? But the discipline was just. Wasn't overreacted, it was just. So I learned respect from the discipline.
Okay. Good to know. Anyway, he's the guy in charge. He's the guy in charge of DHS. He is he's an incompetent buffoon. What was we ranked? He's an incompetent buffoon. And no, as a kid, you didn't deserve to get hit by a belt. Okay? I had discipline in my house, but it was respect, right? You learn. There was never a fear of I got cracked across the ass when I was a kid, for sure. No doubt about it. That's generational. But, you know, I never did it. Never did it to my kids. Most parents that I know don't do it. And you see this in church families. I've been reading a lot about this, in conservative households. Oftentimes, right? You see that form of discipline. And this is the guy now who's in charge of DHS. The agency that's been under question for their tactics, the agency who's directly responsible for deaths of American citizens and non-citizens in their custody, the agency responsible for loss of life, Keith Porter, Renee Good, Alex Preddy, for example, right? So I don't have a lot of faith there's going to be a lot of reform in DHS. I think there has to be, obviously. This is what the Democrats are holding out for. Similarly, they did the same thing last fall when they held out for health care. And what happened? The Republicans said, we'll negotiate. And what did they do? They didn't negotiate. Yeah, spare the rod, spoil the child. Exactly, Joan. So here we sit, right? Here we sit. We've got gas prices at $3.90. What is it? What's the price now? Just FYI, guys. $3.98. Gas will be above $4 a gallon on average tomorrow at this trend line. $3.98 today, $3.97 yesterday, $3.84 a week ago, $2.97 a month ago, $3.13 a year ago. Diesel prices are up, let's see, almost $2. $3.59 a year ago. They're $5.36 a gallon as of today. Less than Biden. Okay. Actually, sir, when Joe Biden left office, gas prices were like $2.95 a gallon. So no, you're wrong. You can find a point in history. Sure, no problem. We can also say there are points in history when Joe Biden's gas prices were not as high as George W. Bush's or Barack Obama's. You want to play that game, that's fine. But don't be a fool. Don't just sit there and just debase yourself. What about Biden? Biden's gas price was $29 a gallon. Where'd you see that? I saw it when I teleported to the Waffle House. Okay. So again, that's where we sit. So this is going to be very, very interesting how this goes. We've got competing factions here, although the loyalty on the MAGA side is not exactly what it's always been. Case in point, there was a let me see if I can find it. Stephen Miller went to Texas recently. Now, this will tell you a lot. So the fact that the Texas race, we had a lot of conversation. I want to thank Mr. Wendell and in recovering yesterday for a great conversation that we had about, and it exposed a blind spot that I had that I'm going to continue to work on about how I speak to people who've been impacted more so, whose communities have been impacted. Mine hasn't. Long story short, I learned a lot yesterday. So again, thank you, Mr. Wendell. Thank you, recovering. For Republicans to be spending time and or money in Texas politics right now tells you a lot. Okay? So recently, Stephen Miller, everybody's favorite anal polyp, his loyalty test was met with awkward silence in a private meeting. This has been reported by the Bulwark. Stephen Miller was met with an uncomfortable silence when he tried to demand loyalty from Texas House Republicans during a closed-door meeting, according to reports. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff and walking, talking anal polyp, it doesn't say that in the story. I just added that for color. He met with Texas lawmakers last week to try to push them to pass more hardline immigration policies in the red state. Stephen Miller, can we call it what it is? Stephen Miller is a white Christian nationalist who doesn't want any person of color to exist in our country. I think it's safe to say that. Yeah, it is. The 4-hour meeting got off to an embarrassing start for the top Donald Trump ally when Miller asked, quote, "Do we have a rhino problem in Texas?" Rhino, the term, R-I-N-O, Republican in name only, right? So if you are in the party, if you're in the party of the president, a Republican, and you oppose the president in any way, you are immediately labeled a rhino. Liz Cheney, as conservative as you can possibly get, voted like 96% of the time with the president because she decided to defend the Constitution and be part of the J6 committee. She was labeled a rhino. Okay? Do we have a rhino problem in Texas? Using the insulting acronym for Republicans in name only that MAGA supporters use against GOP lawmakers deemed too moderate or insufficiently loyal to the president's ultra-conservative agenda. So Stephen Miller goes and meets with Texas House Republicans and asks them as a group, do we have a rhino problem in Texas? Quote, "There was no answer. It was just uncomfortable silence," said State Rep Tom Oliverson, the chairman of the Texas House Republican Caucus. He told the New York Times. Fellow State Rep Charlie Guerin also walked out of the room after becoming frustrated with Miller's questions about being rhinos in Texas, according to the conservative website Current Revolt, which first reported on the meeting. Oliverson believes Miller brought the Texas House Republicans together as part of a broader push to advance the administration's hardline policies at the state level, knowing it would be more difficult to pass them at the federal level. The effort could become even more challenging after the midterms, when Republicans could lose control of the House and possibly the Senate amid a growing backlash against Trump's erratic second term. He, Miller, quote, sees conservative states like Texas and Florida as partners with the federal government. We can be a place where some of those ideas can be tried out because they're difficult to do at the federal level. Miller questioned why the GOP-dominated Texas legislature, Texas, we're talking to you. Miller questioned why the GOP-dominated Texas legislature had not passed a law limiting public education funding to U.S. citizens. The historic Supreme Court decision, Plyler versus Doe, ruled in 1982 that states must provide funding for the education of undocumented immigrant children. Miller, the architect of Trump's most hardline immigration policies, also questioned the Texas Republicans why they had not passed bills preventing undocumented immigrants from renting property in the Lone Star State. When asked if he believed there was a rhino problem in Texas, Oliver said there is plenty of finger pointing among Republicans. Everyone to the left of them is a rhino, he told the Times, and everyone to the right of them is crazy. So that's kind of what's going on in Texas politics. And just as a reminder, this is Stephen Miller.
And Stephen Miller joins us now with more. All right. So you and Kristi Noem are pushing for $3,000 a day, but you're also going to fortify.
This is, again, of course, before Kristi Noem got her papers.
By ICE. And the one big beautiful bill, my understanding is with at least $147 billion more for them to accomplish that goal. Explain.
Yes. Well, under President Trump's leadership, we are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. And President Trump is going to keep pushing to get that number up higher each and every single day so we can get all of the Biden illegals that were flooded into our country for 4 years out of our country. And we can't take the risk of letting these Biden illegals roam around freely so that the next American daughter can get raped.
So do you hear his inflection increase? It's almost like he's getting off on it, literally getting off on it when he's talking about the Biden illegals and we don't want them in here. This is who he is. This is who this guy is. He is a fucking monster. And he is the guy in charge of immigration policy. Some people say, no, it's pretty obvious. I just want you to hear how his inflection changes as he's asked these questions.
$1 more for them to accomplish that goal. Explain.
Yes. Well, under President Trump's leadership, we are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. And President Trump is going to keep pushing to get that number up higher each and every single day so we can get all of the Biden illegals that were flooded into our country for 4 years out of our country. And we can't take the risk of letting these Biden illegals roam around freely so that the next American daughter can get raped, the next American kid can get murdered, the next American family can get splintered and torn apart by people that came into this country unchecked, uncontrolled, unvetted, uninvited by the American people. As to the reconciliation bill, Sean, there's been so much said about how incredible the big beautiful bill is.
So this goes back to prior passage of the big beautiful bill. I don't think you need to hear any more, but I just want to think about what you just heard there. It's almost like bloodthirsty. So remember, there was reporting that they set this number at between 3,000 and 4,000 a day, and they were falling way short of that. And part of the reporting, again, this is what the reporting said. Just target people, just round people up so we can meet this quota, so that we can go back and tell the American public, those that are bloodthirsty like me, that we rounded up a whole bunch of people. 3,000, 4,000 a day. Yeah, okay.
Largest tax cut and reform in American history.
That's fine.
The most significant energy reform, unlocking American energy in American history. Deregulation like we have never seen before. The most significant, largest welfare reform in American history. But the bill also includes the complete fulfillment of President Trump's campaign promises on every aspect of immigration and homeland security so that we can have permanently the safest, strongest, most secure immigration system in American history, Sean.
All right, so we'll secure the border. We will deport criminal illegals. Again, the money will be put in that one big, beautiful bill. But also, it will lead America towards energy dominance. We also have the $10 trillion that the president has in commitments for manufacturing, for semiconductors, pharmacy.
Okay, doesn't matter. You get the idea. Okay, so this becomes this loyalty test. So this goes back to what I was saying before. The fracturing within, especially, well, there's the Freedom Caucus fracturing that's in the House. And then you've got people in the Senate. You've got Rand Paul, one in particular, and even Josh Hawley somewhat has been like, why are we combining these two kinds of things? We've got to fund the airports. We've got to get TSA employees paid. We got to fund the Coast Guard. We've got to fund the teleporting agency. I'm going to refer to it from now on. Yeah, I'm just, because it's fun. Anyway, but you've got people like Stephen Miller who are pushing this hateful, like almost demonic rhetoric. Remember, I don't want to gross anybody out. Remember though, Katie Miller, his wife, was being interviewed and she referred to her husband as a sexual matador. Again, whatever happens behind closed doors, if that's what's going on in the Miller household, I'd hate to imagine what he would be like if he didn't have some of those moments. I'm just saying. That's who's in charge. That's who's pulling the strings in our immigration system, which again brings us right back. Exactly, leave it behind closed doors. Yes. It brings us right back to the SAVE Act. Okay. Sorry, Jess, you're right. Chin kick. Exactly. Sorry. SAVE Act is not going to pass. Republicans know it. They don't have an out. They are now on the clock for funding DHS. Democrats have said, we're ready to do this. Let's go. We're ready to do it. We're not going to agree to extend ICE funding. If you guys want to do that in reconciliation, there's not a damn thing we can do about it. You've got the majority. Knock yourself out. John Thune knows that. The president is stupid, but he knows that too. So here's where we sit. I guess we'll learn more over the next few days. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, we've talked about the situation with this potential peace deal. Actually, before I do that, there's something I wanted to cover because it's probably not going to get discussed enough, right? There's a statement that the president put out on Truth Social that I need to read to you because I think it speaks to exactly what we discuss in this space every day about the president's loyalty and whom he admires. You would think he would choose to admire some people throughout history who've done positive things for their country. Not our president. Nope. Instead, he's going to focus on Viktor Orban.
Highly respected Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, is a truly strong and powerful leader with a proven track record of delivering phenomenal results. He fights tirelessly for and love his great country and people, just like I do for the United States of America. Victor works hard to protect Hungary, grow the economy, create jobs, promote trade, stop illegal immigration, and ensure law and order. Relations between Hungary and the U.S. have reached new heights of cooperation and spectacular achievement under my administration, thanks largely to Prime Minister Orban. I look forward to continuing working closely with him so that both of our countries can further advance this tremendous path to success and cooperation. I was proud to endorse Victor for re-election in 2022 and am honored to do so again. Election day is April 12, 2026. Hungary, get out and vote for Victor. He's a true friend, a fighter, and a winner, and has my complete and total endorsement for re-election as Prime Minister of Hungary. All caps, Viktor Orban will never let the great people of Hungary down. I am with him all the way. President DJT.
Okay. Orban is widely criticized for weakening democratic institutions in Hungary. He changed the constitution and election rules in ways that critics say favor his party. Does that sound familiar? He expanded control over the courts and judicial appointments. Does that sound familiar? He also reduced checks and balances. Organizations like the European Union and Freedom House have said Hungary has moved away from full democracy towards authoritarianism. Also, government allies have acquired many major media outlets. Sound familiar? Independent journalists report pressure and reduced access. Critics say this creates a pro-government media ecosystem. Anti-immigration policies. Orban is one of Europe's strongest opponents of immigration. He built border fences during the 2015 migrant crisis. He framed immigration as a threat to national identity and security. He promoted Christian Europe rhetoric. Supporters see this as protecting sovereignty. Critics call it xenophobic. LGBTQ plus and social policies. He passed laws restricting the queer community's content in schools and media, opposed same-sex adoption and broader LGBTQ plus rights. These policies have drawn strong criticism from human rights groups and EU institutions. His relationship with Russia and EU tensions. He maintains relatively warm relations with Russia even after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, frequently clashes with the EU over sanctions, rule of law, and funding. Hungary has had EU funds withheld over concerns about corruption and democratic standards. Corruption and patronage allegations. Critics say Orban's government steers public money to allies and loyal business figures. The EU has investigated concerns over misuse of funds. He remains popular for several reasons. Strong stance on national sovereignty, economic stability relative to some neighbors, anti-immigration policies, and then portrays himself as defending traditional values. And the similarities between these two guys is so fucking scary. Populist message within the country, immigration, anti-gay, anti-LGBTQIA, anti-marginalized communities, anti-small d democratic institutions, anti-free speech, anti-freedom of the press. It's a playbook. And again, our president said, highly respected prime minister. He fights tirelessly for and loves his great country and people just like I do. He promotes law and order. He creates jobs, etc., etc., etc. I mean, Viktor Orban is a bona fide authoritarian. There's no doubt about it. Everybody outside of the little fascist fight club, Trump and Putin and Orban and others, all see him the same way. That's who he is. So pay attention to Hungary. And don't forget, Orban spoke at was it a CPAC event? It might have been a CPAC event or Turning Point event, either one. They brought him in as a guest speaker. That guy who is absolutely anti-democracy. He's pro-corruption. He's anti-immigration. He's anti-democratic institutions. He's anti-free speech. He's anti-freedom of the press. And that is the guy that our president thinks is a winner. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we cleared that up. Imagine idolizing an authoritarian as the president of the United States. Same kind of deference that our president pays to Putin. They're all connected. Don't forget, the president has talked about this in glowing terms. How Kim Jong-un's people stand up and salute. I want my people to do that. We see it all the time. We see it like all the time. There's never a day that passes where our president doesn't act like an autocrat. And then he tells us out loud every day. He tells us out loud every single day of the things that he's going to do. And then he praises authoritarians who are doing the exact same thing. Okay? All right. So let's get into a couple of other things here. I'm going to play some sound. I want to thank Drew for this. He sent me this sound, and I recall this. Before we get into our topics today, I just want to go back in time. This goes back to 2003. You're going to hear from Bernie. Okay, Bernie talking about looking into the crystal ball, predicting the future. He would go around classrooms around the state of Vermont. This is when he was back in the House before he became a senator. He'd travel the country, didn't have the profile that he has now. But I just want you to listen to what he had to say here. This is. I'm
going to show you this video from 2003, and I need to know what you guys see.
Just listen to this. This is foreshadowing, if you will.
It is long, but you've got to watch to the end.
Republican Party do so good. If you are the Republican leadership, and this is what your goals are. Goals are to give huge tax breaks to the very richest people in this country. Your goals are ultimately to privatize Social Security so that Wall Street can make money from that.
As we're going through this, right? As we're going through this, we talk about this oftentimes about what the Republicans are trying to do now through Project 2025. Okay, this goes back to 2003. Through Project 2025, right? Privatize prisons more so than we have now. Privatize Social Security. Privatize TSA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are connected to Republican policies. The blueprint is right in Project 2025. So Bunny, I had a crystal ball back in 2003. My hands were warm. I had mittens. I saw the future. I saw it. The future is real. The future is now. I saw it. So there you go.
Privatize Medicare so the insurance companies can make more money. Privatize education. Do away with public schools. Now, if you had an agenda like that and you went before the American people, tax breaks for the rich, destruction of Medicare, destruction of Social Security as we know it, lowering the minimum wage or abolishing it, how many votes do you think you'd get? Not a whole lot. The richest 1% would vote for you. But that's not a lot of votes. So what do? Got a problem. You package it. How do you package it? And here I want you to pay attention to me. This is bad stuff. Tax breaks, we can argue that. But that doesn't win you elections. So this is what you do. What you do is divide people up. When you ask me your question, how do I get elected? I said, I try to bring people together. We fight for women's rights. We support the rights of minorities. We support the rights of workers. We bring the majority of people together. And occasionally, honest people will have differences of opinion. In this room, there will be differences of opinion. But everybody in this room is in agreement that everybody should have health care, right? Question number 2, should we increase funding for education or should we lower funding for education? Raise your hand if you think we should increase funding for education.
Everybody does.
Okay, you're on the side of the vast majority of Americans. So on those issues, we bring people together. Now, what do the Republicans try to do? And they use it in what we call language that they don't, not upfront about. What do? We divide people up by races. Affirmative action becomes one issue. All them black people are getting the jobs that we white people used to have. Split people, working class, white against black. Instead of working together to create decent jobs for all. Those uppity women now, they want the...
So the principle of the economic separation so that the rich can become richer and the poor can become poorer, as he's describing, Republicans have been packaging this from a culture war perspective, right? Using rhetoric about taking your jobs, black jobs, immigrants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all to continue to enrich themselves. So the entire thing has been, a political, ideological grift. And who gets harmed? The people who literally are voting against their own interests. He'll explain it.
Right to choose. We'll split people on the abortion issue. We'll split people up on the gun issue. We'll split people up on religious issues. And then they end up, if you're a middle-class person, voting against your own interests.
Seriously.
And the rich go laughing all the way to the bank.
Correct.
They very often play white workers off against everybody else.
Correct.
We try to bring people together to say, look, we're all in this boat together, whether you're black or white, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Muslim, whatever you may be. Everybody needs health care. How do we create a health care system that works for all people? Not divide people up. Young people do not make it into the middle class unless they have a decent college education. So how do we make college education accessible to all people? Not an expensive proposition, a tiny, tiny fraction of the president's tax breaks for the rich. If we put into financial aid, make sure that every young person in this country could go to college without going deeply into debt. In order to do that, we got to bring everybody together. But some people who I don't respect will play off women against men, black against white. Oh, the gay issue, very, very big issue. Straight against gay, right? We're all supposed to hate gay people, so we split that group up. And then the argument, some of us are not patriotic. We had concerns about the war in Iraq. I voted against giving the president authority to the war in Iraq. Well, that makes us unpatriotic. We hate America. Divide those things up. And that's how they succeed.
And the people who...
Juan and Paige Raiders, thank you guys. Hearts in chat for Raiders. Seriously, though, think about what he said there. I mean, talk about prolific. It's absolutely right. I mean, you understand where I get a lot of my political ideology from. It's from Bernie. I worked on 2 of his campaigns. I've been hearing this message, this progressive message about what needs to be changed. And he's always focused on the money and the corruption in politics, the over influence of those people who've got the most money influencing policy. So the right has done a really good job of saying the left makes this about culture wars. No. The entire culture war argument in the body politic in the U.S. over the last 30 years comes from Bernie. Comes from the right. Bernie describes it. They tried to divide, and they divided at every corner. Pro-life versus women wanting to murder their kids for abortion. Immigrants are taking your gerbs. Black jobs. You name it. You name it. You can go through the list. And who benefits? We know who benefits. It's always about the money. It's always about the money. We know who benefits. Now, I've been accused of being, a radical leftist because I want health care. because I believe that health care, food, water, and shelter are basic human rights. And I've been accused of being radical. Okay. Sign me up. No doubt about it. Myself and the 1,700 or so radicals that are in here, welcome to being radical. If that's how we're going to be remembered, okay. Okay. Republican policies over the last 40 years have been designed to divide. Democratic policies, by and large, thank you, Juan Raiders, by and large, have been to unite. Unite around what? Healthcare. Unite around what? Education reform. Unite around what? Propping up the working poor and the middle class, potentially raising the minimum wage. To unite around what? Changing the tax code so that the middle class can benefit. Unite around what? Housing. When you think about it in those terms, where is the opposition? The opposition focuses on things that they've been told to focus on. They are still doing lives in this space about illegal immigrants. Why? Because they've been told to. They have been told to. You heard the script. You heard it. We're going to divide you. We can't just go out and this goes back to this goes back right to when Roe was signed, 1975, whatever the date was. Goes right back to then. Okay, so the religious right, the heritage, I forget the name of the group. It'll come to me. The Federalist group, those not the Federalists, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, it became a political issue. They could not run on imposing Christian Heritage Foundation. There's a few others. They ran on evangelical, sure, all of them. They couldn't run on Christian nationalism. Not really popular. So they needed to find an issue. They needed to find something to start the split. So what do they focus on? They focused on AB, right? They did not, this was post civil rights. They were not happy that black people suddenly started to get more rights. They were not happy that women were getting more rights. They were not happy with any of those things. They couldn't come out and say it. So they needed to find something that was divisive, something that they could divide the country on, not unite around, something they could divide around. What did they pick? They picked abortion. We can lean in on this. We can create a divide here. We can really start to separate the herd. Meanwhile, we'll let them fight about that, and we'll just pass tax breaks so we can get richer. You think I'm wrong? We can pull the thread, right? You can see it play out over the last 50 years. So what did they do? They created this culture war. Paul Weyrich, exactly. I don't want to minimize women's rights to their bodies to culture war, but I think you know where I'm going with this. So they used that. They used the abortion movement. They use women's reproductive health as a dividing term. They try to create this group of people who supported choice as radical, schmurderers, targeting Planned Parenthood, targeting reproductive facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Again, meanwhile, they're doing it so that they can enrich themselves. They can justify tax breaks because people in our country are voting for us because they don't want women using AB as birth control, even though it doesn't happen. And even if it did, I don't give a fuck. It's up to women. It's their body. The moral majority. Exactly. Jerry Falwell and that group. They got in Reagan's ear. They just needed a figure. That figure was Ronald Reagan. They called the moral majority. They talked about how we are the ones who stand for life. We are the ones who stand for religious freedom. And they combined those two. And that divide got wider and wider and wider and wider. So if you want to be labeled a radical because you support women's rights to their body, or you support the rights for all marginalized communities, all marginalized, whatever category you are considered in, whether you be disabled, whether you be black or brown, whether you be a woman, whether you be whatever it might be. When I say marginalized, I mean everybody that's considered marginalized. If you want to be considered radical because you support those communities, if you want to be considered radical because you believe a tax code should benefit the working poor, the middle class, if you believe you're radical because you believe in a social safety net, or you believe funding for public education should be something we should prioritize, then welcome to being radical. I mean, I try to simplify things as much as I can around here, you guys, but I mean, is it any simpler than that? We've got, you heard it. I mean, again, Bernie nails it. He talks about it. Does anybody, you guys, if you want to hear that again, let me know. But he talks about it in those simplest terms. Here's the plan. If you want to get all this shit done, you got it. You can't, people are not going to vote for it. They're not going to support all this kind of shit. We've got to wrap it in something. So let's wrap it up in these culture war issues. Divide black and white people. Divide white and brown people. Divide gay and straight people, right? And then you add more targeted assaults against the trans community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here we sit. So when the right tries to tell you that the left is all about culture wars, just laugh in their face. Like, you got to be kidding me. Your entire platform is about culture war. Your entire fucking platform. Exactly, Ms. Wonder. Kindness to all. We could have had Bernie. You're right. We could have. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, culture wars, sprinkle them with the rights. What? Of course, culture. When I say culture wars, I include white supremacy. I include racism. I include the misogyny. It's all part of it. That's the script. I want to play this one more time because I don't want people to forget what he said here. Because
I'm going to show you this video
because it's very prolific and it's very prophetic and it's very profound. And I think it's necessary that we hear it. Don't let it escape our history.
If you are the Republican leadership,
just think about
this is what your goals are. Goals are to give huge tax breaks to the very richest people in this country. Your goals are ultimately to privatize Social Security so that Wall Street can make money from that. Privatize Medicare so the insurance companies can make more money. Privatize education. Do away with public schools. Now, if you had an agenda like that and you went before the American people, tax breaks for the rich, destruction of Medicare, destruction of Social Security as we know it, lowering the minimum wage or abolishing it, how many votes do you think you'd get?
That's the question. Think about that, what he just said. If you go to the American people with that as your agenda, you're never going to win anything. So you got to wrap it up in something. So you wrap it up in a culture war. You wrap it up in racism. You wrap it up in sexism. You wrap it up in misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Not a whole lot. The richest 1% would vote for you. But that's not a lot of votes. So what do I do? Got a problem. You package it. How do you package it? And here I want you to pay attention to me. This is bad stuff. Tax breaks, we can argue that. But that doesn't win you elections. So this is what you do. What you do is divide people up. When you ask me your question, how do I get elected? I said, I try to bring people together. We fight for women's rights. We support the rights of minorities. We support the rights of workers. We bring the majority of people together. And occasionally, honest people will have differences of opinion. In this room, there will be differences of opinion. But everybody in this room is in agreement that everybody should have health care, right? Question number 2, should we increase funding for education or should we?
That right there, I'm going to pause right there. Healthcare. The conservative right has been able to convince tens of millions of Americans that you don't deserve healthcare. That same group of people, if you ask them, you guys have heard me ask this question, people in our chat and on other lives, is food a right? And they'll tell you no, it's not a right. You have a right to go out and earn it. You have a right to go out and get it, but you don't have a right to it. That crowd of people, predominantly Christian, we know that from voting records, have been convinced that health care is not a right, or it's just some communist takeover of America, and that food isn't a right either. Okay.
lower funding for education. Raise your hand if you think we should increase funding for education. Okay, you're on the side of the vast majority of Americans. So on those issues, we bring people together. Now, what do the Republicans try to do? And they use it in what we call language that they don't, not upfront about. What do? We divide people up by races. Affirmative action becomes one issue. All them black people getting a job.
CRT, right? CRT. Same thing. It's the same fucking script from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s to the teens to the 20-odds. Same fucking script.
That we white people used to have. Split people, working class, white against black. Instead of working together to create decent jobs for all. Those uppity
blue-collar people voting for Trump and voting for conservatives. The people that are part of unions voting for people who want to break up their unions. Make that make sense.
Women now, they want the right to choose. We'll split people on the abortion issue.
Exactly, Reed. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's the same fucking script.
Split people up on the gun issue. We'll split people up on religious issues. And then they end up, if you're a middle-class person, voting against your own interests, and the rich go laughing all the way to the bank. They very often play white workers off against everybody else.
Correct.
We try to bring people together to say, look, we're all in this boat together, whether you're black or white, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Muslim, whatever you may be. Everybody needs health care. How do we create a healthcare system that works for all people, not divide people up? Young people do not make it into the middle class unless they have a decent college education. So how do we make college education accessible to all people? Not an expensive proposition, a tiny, tiny fraction of the president's tax breaks for the rich. If we put into financial aid, make sure that every young person in this country could go to college without going deeply into debt. In order to do that, we got to bring everybody together. But some people who I don't respect will play off women against men, black against white. Oh, the gay issue, very, very big issue. Straight against gay, right? We're all supposed to hate gay people, so we split that group up. And then the argument, some of us are not patriotic. We had concerns about the war in Iraq. I voted against giving the president authority to the war in Iraq. Well, that makes us unpatriotic. We hate America. Divide those things up. And that's how they succeed.
And the people who need to hear that won't listen, even though all of this is right in front of their face.
Then we get a comment from somebody in the chat. Selfish Pro 230 says, nothing weaker than the liberal male. You see, Selfish, you can spam the chat all you want. You know, the chat will eat you up. That's fine. But I'm up here fighting for your rights to health care, sir. Ma'am, don't know your pronouns. I'll make some assumptions. I'm up here making sure that the tax code benefits you and future generations of your family. I'm up here saying that I advocate for respect at work. That I want to make sure you can afford to live. But I don't want you gouged by corporations who are predatory. If that's weak, then okay, I'll wear that proudly. Here we sit. This has been the script for 50 years, and I've been telling you guys this for a very long time. Republicans have always played the long game, right? They've been in this for 50 years, and they finally have reached the pinnacle. And then what's happened? It's never been about America. It's never been about the citizens. It's been about the corporate lobbies that are putting money in their pockets, enriching themselves on the back of hardworking Americans who were lied to over culture wars. I am not up here defending the Democratic Party. I've been pretty objective about that. I'm not. I can say this, though, honestly, that if you look back over that same 50 years, you can say which party's created more jobs? Democrats. Which party has done more for women's reproductive care? Democrats. What party has done more for marginalized communities in general? Democrats. What parties have done more for education? Democrats. What parties have done more for healthcare? Democrats. I mean, it's not opinion. That's just objectively true. Lower the deficit, create more jobs. If that is the goal, then why do people continue to vote Republican? They do it because they've been convinced that black and brown people, gay people, disabled people, poor people, immigrants are the threat. They've convinced tens of millions of Americans that marginalized communities are the threat. That you should be afraid of immigrants. That you should be afraid of women. That you should be afraid of the poor. That you should be afraid of the educated. They've been able to convince you of that. And they're laughing because they convinced you. And your vote has helped them win elections. That's the weird part. And it's going to continue to happen unless we stand up. Good morning, Shell. How are you today?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. I'm well. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. What's on your mind?
What you're talking about here reminds me of something that was preached in every one of my psychology, human development, sociology courses, and that's Aristotle's Gestalt theory or emergence. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the phrase was essentially the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and it's like an attack on them. And so I just thought this was a really interesting thing to bring up, or that it went right along with what I learned in those classes, because they were all about, making the society as a collective better. So just thought I'd come up and add that.
I appreciate that. You're absolutely right. And we see that every single day. Thank you for that perspective, friend. I appreciate you being here. Have a good day. Be safe out there.
Thank
you. And we have evidence. Of course, our friend Selfish Pro. Can somebody mute Selfish, please? It's just annoying me at this point. We can look at policies. It's not hard. We can look at policies implemented by these same people who started the culture war fight in their states. States who are run by Republicans rank highest in gun violence, highest in violence in general, highest rates of domestic violence, lowest in education, highest rates of infant mortality, highest rates of maternal mortality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a stretch to be able to say, if we had policies that focused on education, childcare, healthcare, those states do better. Period. Full stop. Welcome to Oklahoma. Exactly. That's the fight. That's the fight that we're in now. We're fighting against a culture war created by conservatives. Chickasaur, how are you today?
Hi, good morning, Steve. I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so thinking a lot about what you were talking about, that's also come up in Sinjay's life about culture wars versus race wars, and she's saying that in her country, it's not so much about race, that they don't want certain types of immigrants. It's more about culture. And I think I have a really hard time wrapping my mind around that, because while I do understand that race is a completely social construct, it does seem like it's about proximity to whiteness to me, and heterosexuality and men.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I totally agree with what you're saying, but I do agree that it's about proximity to whiteness, which is why you think about white supremacy being sprinkled in all these things, right? So the culture wars, from my perspective, again, my opinion alone, the culture war, the assault on the American democratic institutions led by conservatives and their culture wars has created this situation where proximity to whiteness, not something you can advertise. Hey, we're the Republican Party. We're all about proximity to whiteness. But that's what it's about. To me, that's what it's about. So I would agree with that. I do think that there is some nuance there connecting to culture wars and race wars. I want to go down that road just yet, but
so much nuance.
Yeah. So I would look at it just a little bit differently. But I hear what you're saying.
I guess it ultimately, with a broad stroke, how do we interact with otherness? And even within certain parts of the country, being in, New York City, otherness is everywhere. Pretty hard to escape otherness, and I prefer it that way. But other states, I lived in Colorado for a little bit. Otherness was not welcome. Otherness was not sought after or embraced. So I guess I'm just, yeah.
I mean, and there's, and I want to give Geeky a chance to jump in here. Again, words like that, it's othering communities. In my perspective, from my opinion, that's part of the strategy. It's by design. It's the intent to divide over something that's real to many, identifying as a human, but it doesn't solve any problem. Geeky, did you want to comment on something I saw you had requested? Hi,
Yeah.
by the way. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Steve. Thank you for having me up. Good morning, Chica. Good morning. Good morning to everybody. Keep tapping the screen, keep sharing the live, keep doing all the good things, knock out gift goals, all that jazz.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. You're welcome. Thank you for having me. So one of the things that we often talk about, especially in literary theory, is Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality. Because we have so many different intersections that come together, we have to look at them as if it's a pyramid. So up at the top of that pyramid, that high seat that you have is the cis-het white man who is, able-bodied and rich.
Not
educated,
not rich, but me, but not rich. Yes,
but like
yeah,
you're hitting pretty much all of them, and then as you come down, the base of that pyramid would be someone like a black trans woman with disabilities who is impoverished. So you have that pyramid, and one of the things that I've always found interesting is oftentimes when you see people who are marginalized, so anyone who is not that pinnacle white man, able-bodied, all that jazz, oftentimes you'll see people all down the pyramid sell out their intersections for their connection to whatever it may be. So like me being, from Syria, I've seen in my own family, Syrian men sell out the fact that we are, immigrants and basically public enemy number one to the United States for their connection to either being a man, having money, or whatever it may be. They've sold out certain intersections that still make us targets. So what we need to do is find those intersections, find where that comes together, and build community based off of that. And once we do that, we will see that we outnumber that man at the top. 10,000 to, like 10 million to 1, we outnumber them. And when we finally come together, when we finally see that we have more in common than we ever have had apart, then we'll start coming back. We'll start working as a collective. That's what we need to work towards, that collective. Because we don't have it right now. Because exactly like Steve was saying, they've divided us. And they're succeeding at it. Because every time every time someone starts to do something, starts to talk, starts to speak out, we immediately play into the, no true Scotsman. We immediately start picking apart little things. And one of the things I always say is that we need to have grace for when people change their minds and learn. Because what we see is so often people are like, oh, well, you said this 25 years ago. And it's like, yeah, 25 years ago, I was a stupid 15-year-old. Of course, I'm going to say some stupid shit. I was 15. You got to give grace for people. Because that grace is what brings people in. People aren't going to remember you for the power you wield. They're going to remember you for your kindness.
Sorry, I want to talk to you about that in a second. Chickasaur, anything else that you'd like to add? So don't leave yet, Kiki. I want to talk to you about something. But Chickasaur, anything else that you'd like to add to that?
It sounds like, and I think that this is a hallmark of growth, of resilience, is the ability to be cognitively flexible, the ability to not be as rigid or intense about certain beliefs and attitudes, patterns. So I think flexibility.
Agreed. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you very much. Have a good day. Be safe out there. So, Kiki, something you said, I think it's really important. And I discuss this a lot, right? About how a system built by people who look like me, and you touched on it, who benefit people who look like me, but more importantly these days, to protect people who look like me. And I think the culture war game, they played it successfully. I'm using that euphemistically, but they played it successfully
gigantic
for 50 years.
Air quotes around it.
You know what I mean, though. You know what I mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The issue now is the census is catching up to them being the evangelicals, the Christian nationalists, the white supremacists. The census is coming up to them, which is part of the push to want to suppress the vote. So this big strategy regarding the SAVE Act or whatever it might be, they understand that within, I think it's by 2035 or 2040, that white people in America will no longer be the majority. So
Absolutely.
they've reached the end of their. Would you agree with that? That part of the push is because that's the maths, so to speak.
So, one of the things that I often say to men who look just like you, Steve, is, why are you guys so afraid of being a minority? Is it like you're treating minorities poorly or something? Like, why are you so afraid of it? It's what drives that, debunked replacement theory. It's what really drives everything, because what they don't realize is we're not going to treat them the way that they treated us.
Correct.
We're not going to do that. And
correct.
While that is their biggest fear, it'll always drive them to want to suppress us. They think that we're going to treat them the way that they've treated us. And it's just, it's simply not true. And I think that
they've never been, yeah, you're right. They've never been in a position where they've ever had to worry about that, right?
Exactly.
The like you said, the social hierarchy. If you're cis, white, hetero, male, Christian in America, you are the most privileged human that perhaps have ever existed, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The privilege that you have sitting in that pinnacle seat, it's unmatched in this world that we have right now because they've made it that way. And something that you said earlier with the whole quote unquote identity politics, we never asked to be politicized. They politicized us to use us as pawns.
Correct.
As a non-binary, child of immigrants, I never asked to be a political pawn, but they pushed that on us. They've given us identities where if we don't abide by them, we're ostracized. And if we do abide by them, we're a minority and we're ostracized. It's the Kobayashi Maru. It's a no-win situation.
Exactly. Thank you for your brain and your friendship. I appreciate you very much. Am I going to see you this weekend? Is that something that's going to happen? Are you in the Big Grapple?
I wish, because of all my intersections, and because
You have a lot of them. You have a lot of intersections. Yeah. You are like a California highway, my friend. You are like a California highway.
I really am. I am the 405, and really there is no time of day where there's not traffic. Unfortunately, I will not be getting on a plane, but I'm going to be out in the LA protests. And I will be out there, boots on the ground. And if y'all want protest advice, please, please, please. I've been protesting for 26 years. I have learned the tools of the trade of how to protect yourself at a protest. Please DM me. I will happily give you tips.
I appreciate you. And when I'm on the road for Do Something,
you too.
We need to have coffee or something else. I appreciate you very much. You have a good day. Be safe out there. Take care of yourself. All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye. Again, this is perfectly said, Kiki, perfectly said. This is a strategy. This is a long game, right? But they've reached the end because you're now the entire push behind this movement was continued generational loyalty. Thank you. That's cool. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate you, bro. Generational loyalty. So think about the assaults on public education, right? You guys know where my brain works. I look at patterns. I look at connective tissue. I look at building a case, connecting all the dots. Why would you go after public education? It's not because conservatives, let me rephrase that. It is because conservatives don't want history taught. They don't want people to see the patterns that we just described. They don't want to see the importance of immigrants. They don't want to see the evolution of our society as we become more diverse. They're afraid of that. Fundamental principle of human progression is education. The more we learned, the more advanced we became, the better off we became. So when women are graduating college at a higher rate than men, Black women in particular, that freaks people out in general who look like me, the hierarchy that Geeky was describing. They don't want that. They don't want a progression of rights. Exactly, breaking point, Airwolf. They've reached it. They don't want the progression of rights. I believe that you are seeing the end. This is my opinion. The MAGA death rattle, sure. But I really believe you are seeing the end of conservative politics. Okay? What do I mean by that? I mean the traditional conservative model that they've used as a culture war spear for the last 50 years. They see it, which is why it's a money grab now. Let's try to enrich ourselves. Let's try to change democratic norms. Let's try to change the way we vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things, which is why we have to stay involved. It's the foot on the political neck, so to speak. Kick them when they're down. Keep the pressure on. Jigsaw, are you there? Might have timed out. A bunch of other stuff I want to talk about on this topic as well. Good morning, brother. How are you?
Good morning. Great show as usual. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to be a little less jovial today. Florida did surprise me yesterday. We won a district where Donald Trump likes to make his other residents. Oh, by the way, since you're trying to destroy mail-in voting, Donald Trump, you did cast a vote by mail the other day. I just want everybody to know that. And
we talked about that to start the show. Yeah. We talked about that. Yep.
Steve, I'm afraid we're going to reach. I can be Stretch Armstrong. Yes, I aged myself there. I can be Stretch Armstrong only for so much. This is the first president that has ever directly affected me. I've gone through George W. I've gone through Reagan. I was too young for Reagan. I remember George W. And they never really, I never really felt a direct assault from them. Here I am, a 45-year-old man. I make, and I'm about to embarrass myself, I make a little less than $17 an hour at my job. And in today's economy, I cannot apply for food stamps. I have to figure out which bill I'm going to pay, which health care I can receive. I'm lucky that I'm a veteran that I can go to the health care, but have you ever tried to go to a veterans health care center just for a common cold or even, just routine medical care? It could take 6 months to a year just to even receive that. And they've got it most departments that even take your call. They're pushing me into a depression I've never seen before. And I don't want politics in my family life. I want my family to be enjoying, trips to the park, trips to some waterfall or something like that. Instead, I've got to worry about, hey, Donald Trump just completely gutted food stamps. How is this man going to stop looking like a failure for his family? I've tried to get better jobs. I hear that from my Republicans every single time. But even the better jobs have cut health care. They've cut financial assistance. Hell, I even tried to go back to a Walmart because they offered me $18 an hour. You know what they told me about access to food? It's not our problem. It's not our responsibility. These people tell me to get better jobs and I try, and it's even worse than the job I had before. So where's the breaking point with this administration? He campaigned on and defeated Kamala Harris on the guise of, I'm going to get food in your cabinets. I'm going to put money in your wallet. My electricity bill from my company right now, $542.25. That is literally half of my paycheck, if not all of it. Then I've got about $1,300, $1,400 rent. How am I supposed to do these things? And everybody says, oh, it's woe is you, do better, you're the man, pull your bootstraps up. I can't afford the boots to put on and the straps to connect to the boots to pull them up. I mean, I'm trying to be a good American, pay my taxes, but I feel that other Americans are reaching their breaking point. And what happens when Americans reach their breaking point? Crime, violence, dangerous things happen. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but people are reaching their breaking point. I don't know how to break this and break it down. Steve, can you enlighten me? Maybe there's some good light at the end of the tunnel.
My guy, you should, first of all, do not be embarrassed at all. You're playing the cards that you're dealt. People know who you are. We know who you are. You are speaking on behalf of so many people by sharing your story right now. To me, the hope for me is I come into this every single day. I do this every single day because I want things to be better. I want a brighter future for my daughter, for my grandchildren at some point. I can't believe I just said that. Get that out of my brain. But I want life to be better for people. It's going to take a fight. We've never faced this. White America has never faced this before, ever. My hope is people will start to realize and finally learn lessons from our black brothers and sisters in particular and black women. They've been telling us this for decades. It's nothing new to them. We have to be in the moment to be able to recover from it. So I'm fighting for you, bro. I'm fighting for you.
I I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm going to say this to everybody that helped in our cause. From one simple man who can't keep the lights on but tries every day. Thank you for fighting for democracy. I wish I could be out there with you. Unfortunately, here in Florida, I'm too scared to go out there and be protesting and stuff because our governor says I can be run over at any moment if I'm in the street, out of the street. My heart is with everybody out there. When I see everybody on these contents, showing protest, as a grown 46-year-old man, I shed tears because I feel like I'm not doing enough. And then I hear, I go to the store and I hear the Snickers behind me. Oh, look at this dude. He's pulling out the food stamp card. Oh, he can't be buying Cheetos and, all that stuff. I'm buying whatever food I could afford with whatever food stamps I could afford.
You're doing whatever you can, bro. That's the point. We love you, man. We love you.
I'm going to let you go back to your show.
Talk to you soon. All right, bye. That's the point, right? The entire thing is about doing something. So I'll take this opportunity to do this. Something honest. A lot of people in this country are tired. Not just busy tired. I mean soul tired. Tired of working hard and still feeling like they're falling behind. Tired of watching the news and feeling powerless. Tired of hearing promises every election season and then watching nothing change. And if you've ever felt like your vote doesn't matter, like your voice doesn't count, I want you to know something. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for feeling that way. Because when you feel ignored long enough, you stop believing anyone is listening. And when you stop believing anyone is listening, you stop showing up. But here's what I've learned in my life. The moment that good people stop showing up is the moment the wrong people take over the room. That's why I'm launching something called the Do Something Tour. Not because I think I have the answers, not because I'm here to tell anyone what to think, but because I believe we're losing something precious in this country, and that's our faith in each other. I'm going to travel the country to sit down with people who feel forgotten, people who feel dismissed, people who feel like the system is built for someone else. And I'm going to listen. I want to hear what broke your trust. I want to hear what you've lived through. I want to hear what you wish the people in power actually understood about your life. Because the truth is, democracy is not a speech. It's not a slogan. It's not something that happens once every 4 years. Democracy is people. It's parents trying to keep their kids safe. It's workers trying to keep food on the table. It's communities trying to stay whole. It's people who don't want to be a headline. They just want to be okay. And I know this. If we want change, we can't just hope for it. We have to participate in it. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to know every issue. I'm not asking you to trust politicians. I'm asking you to trust your own worth. To remember that your voice matters, even if it's been ignored. To remember that your vote matters, even if it hasn't felt like it has. And to remember that your presence matters, because this country belongs to you, too. So this is my invitation. Come back in, not because the system deserves you, but because your community does. Your kids do. Your future does. This is the Do Something Tour. And if you've ever felt powerless, I want you to hear me clearly. You still have power. So, let's do something. Together. Lots of shout outs to Sam and to Gregory and to Chris Lewis and to Gravedigger and for everybody else who's helped put that together. That is available on our Instagram channel, and there's also a video that I posted on my page. You can find it there. You can share it. I appreciate that. It's not about me. It's just something that I want to use my privilege to do. The idea behind this entire thing goes to exactly what we've been talking about all morning and pretty much every single day, right? Pretty much every single day. The idea is that if we want these things that perhaps we've taken for granted, we're at a place now where we got to fight for that fucking shit, man. We got to fight for it. We're fighting for healthcare. We're fighting for food security. We're fighting for water, clean air, shelter. Of all things, the United States of America in 2026, the richest country on earth, the richest country in human history. And we have to fight for that? And we're sending the 82nd Airborne overseas. We're sending other military groups overseas to fight another war. The Pentagon asking for $200 billion more. They're likely to get it. So yeah, I'm soul tired, but I am motivated. I am motivated. And all I can ask of you is just to do something, just to stay involved or to get involved. Again, I think this is spread a little bit. Initially, the push was for me to talk to non-voters. It's impossible to identify just non-voters. Right? Remember, I talk about that divide. There's roughly, I think it's 90 million or so that did not vote. We know a large chunk of them. Let's just, for the purpose of this conversation, let's say half. Half of them are the two wings of the same bird, two sides of the same coin. Personally, I think that's just lazy. Because you're always going to find something to complain about. Then there's the other half. People who are not really any different than you and I. They want to raise their family. They want their kids to have access to education. They want to have affordable health care. They're looking at the cost of goods. They're looking at the cost of insurance and everything else just going through the roof, and they just feel ignored. They don't feel like anybody represents them. They've not been visited by a politician. They don't even know what's on the agenda. They don't even know what to vote for. Those are the people that we can talk to. Now, are we going to get disenfranchised conservatives? Sure. Are we going to get Trump voters that might join our conversations? Sure. I'd like to think that I've proven I can talk to people as long as they're willing to be sincere and not be complete just fools. But I want to create a place where people really do want to deconstruct, but they got a place to land. Because I want people to understand what's at stake. This is not about today. It's not about tomorrow. It's about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So that's the push. If you want to help, you can do so. Appreciate you guys. We're going to cover the situation with the alleged peace deal in Iran that the president doesn't even know anything about. His own deal that he's claiming that he's worked on and negotiated doesn't know anything about. So, thank you, Rainey. That's very sweet. Okay. So, let me just double check on a couple of things. Is there any? There was talk about potentially the Senate actually voting today. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but let me see what's this. Okay. All right. So a couple of things. Let me see. What's this? Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Steve. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Thanks for sending me that Bernie bit, by the way. I appreciate that.
I'm so glad you could use it. I often, every time I see something like that, I'm like, oh, Steve would love something like this. But it's so
perfect timing for the conversation. Perfect timing for the conversation I wanted to have today. So it was great. So you must have read my mind. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I know you're about to go into some of the stuff in Iran. I just wanted to read you something real quick. This is a quick breakdown of yesterday's press conference. Taking it from a post called from Politics in the Wild. But this is all, he had that press conference yesterday midday. This all happened in one press conference, okay? 12:03, Trump tells reporters he wants a ceasefire. 12:05, he declares victory over Iran. 12:07, announces we are sending Marines. 12:08, says no boots on the ground. 12:11, says we don't want a ceasefire. 12:16, declares victory again. 12:17, says that he'd like a ceasefire. 12:29 says Iran is begging for a ceasefire. 12:36 says $500 oil is a good thing. 12:37 demands Iran open the strait. 12:41 says U.S. is not at war. And 12:42 declares victory over Iran.
Yeah, that's a wild 45 minutes.
That's all that people need to hear. I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that. And I'll let you do your thing, buddy. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for being here. Yeah. I've got a little bit more, actually, on that. I was going to go down that road. I don't have to, but there's a couple other things. Because, like we always tell you guys, follow the fucking money. This is an interesting story because, let's see if I can find it. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, who I would like to see as the Senate Majority Leader, because I think he's great, accused the Trump administration of a mind-blowing corruption. Not that this would matter. Not that this would matter. But anyway, after it was widely reported that a $1.5 billion stock trade was made moments before the president's announcement that the U.S. and Iran were having constructive negotiations and the U.S. would hold off on further attacking Iranian energy infrastructure. Murphy shared a Monday post from a market analytics site, Unusual Whales, that read, quote, breaking. 5 minutes before Trump's announcement to halt the attacks on Iran, massive trades reportedly hit the market. In one move, $1.5 billion in S&P 500 futures was bought, while $192 million in oil futures was sold. These orders were 4 to 6 times larger than anything else at the time. The traders seemingly made huge gains, unusual, concluded the Post. Murphy then adds the caption, $1.5 billion. Let me say that again. $1.5 billion bet, he continued. Bigger than any futures purchases made at the time. 5 minutes before Trump's post. Who was it? Trump? Family member? White House staffer? This is mind-blowing corruption. CNBC's Yoon Lee also reported on the unusual trading activity ahead of Trump's market-appeasing post. Quote, S&P 500 futures and oil futures flashed an unusual burst of activity early on Monday, minutes before a market-moving social media post from the president, observed Lee, adding, at around 6:50 a.m. in New York. S&P 500 E-mini futures trading on the CME recorded a sharp and isolated jump in volume, breaking from an otherwise subdued pre-market backdrop. With thin liquidity, typical of early trading hours, the sudden burst stood out as one of the largest volume moments of the session up to that point. Last April, Trump's repeated U-turns on his tariff policy, which also sent the market into wild swings, also led to accusations of insider trading among those close to Trump. Geopolitics guru Ian Bremmer also shared a post tracking the $1.5 billion futures trade and commented, quote, the corruption is the most structural, significant part of this administration. Drain the swamp. MAGA. Was that just a coincidence? 5 minutes before the president went on the record saying, we have agreed to stop attacking Iran's energy infrastructure. 5 minutes before that announcement, a $1.5 billion trade, $192 million in oil stock being sold. Nothing to see here, though, right? That's totally fine. What about Biden? Fraud and corruption in daycare centers. Waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare and Medicaid. Undocumented immigrants voting. Culture war. You've been convinced, MAGA. You have been convinced that the bad people are brown people, are gay people, are women. Hunter's lap. Yeah. Hunter's. What about Hunter's cock? What about that? What about it? Is there any of you? Are there any of you in here today who are totally loyal Trump fans? To be able to explain that to me? Or just the numerous other instances of blatant corruption connected to this White House? But Hillary's emails, right? Arrest Jack Smith. Okay. Well, I wish I could say that was the only thing I wanted to cover in that regard, because Pete Hegseth and his Department of War are front and center in this. And we know that Pete Hegseth has been now accused of numerous violations of ethics, codes of conduct, and then, of course, making statements about how this war in Iran is Armageddon. I should say is Yeah, it's Armageddon. This is a holy war, right? Well, Pete Hegseth's pastor, he's got a couple spiritual advisors apparently. The pastor from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's home church in Tennessee said last week on a podcast that he wants James Tallarico to die, referring to the Texas Democrat state representative and Presbyterian Samaritan who regularly discusses his Christian faith in his current bid for the U.S. Senate. Brooks Pottinger, Potteiger, Brooks Pottinger, an evangelical pastor who's been described as Hegseth's closest spiritual advisor, if it's not Doug Wilson, repeatedly attacked Tallarico on this podcast, The Reformation Red Pill. What a clever name. The show is hosted by Joshua Hames, a former pastoral intern at Pottiger's church. After referring to the Texas Democrat as a wolf, a demon, and a snake, and an enemy, the two talked about what they hope becomes of Tallarico. Quote, said Hames, I pray that God kills him. Ultimately, that means killing his heart and raising him up to new life in Christ. Pottinger concurred. Right, he said. We want him crucified with Christ. Hames repeated that he wants death and new life for Tallarico, and it would not be within God's will to do so, stop him by any means necessary. And if it would not be within God's will to do so, stop him by any means necessary. At one point, the podcast host said Tallarico, quote, is the kind of guy you pray psalms against. And I mean that actually. An imprecatory psalm is a biblical song or prayer that invokes God's judgment, curses, or destruction upon enemies. Yep, Pottinger said in response. Nice. These are the people that are leading us. These are the people that are part of the, I think I've got some sound on that. Hang on a second. Doesn't matter. Why? Why would you wish that on someone? Yeah, that was said by a couple of different people. A gentleman by the name of Brooks Pottinger, who's an evangelical pastor who's been described as Hegseth's closest spiritual advisor, and Joshua Hames, who's a former pastoral intern at Pottiger's church. I pray that God kills him, Hames said. Ultimately, that means killing his heart and raising him up to new life in Christ. Okay. That's fine. Nothing to see here, though, right? Okay. We'll do now what's called a segue. By the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but when you ever watch a tennis match, okay, this is a total non sequitur, but if you watch a tennis match and you see someone who maybe is not serving and they turn their back to the net and they walk away, that's by design. That's to leave that point behind them. That's to leave that moment behind them so they can move on to the next moment. So we are segueing to something else, and we are now turning our back to move on to something else. So I thought I would play a little bit of sound for you because this is interesting.
These are Maga's words of wisdom.
So these are the good liars out doing their thing. I'm going to try to do more of these. I've been told that you guys like this stuff, so this is a segment, by the way, that we'll probably do on a regular. But here you go. This is good liars interviewing a Trump supporter at a Trump rally.
Lose your job as a result of the vaccines.
Yep, because I just wasn't allowed in people's homes without a mask, or a lot of people would ask me, are you vaccinated?
And it was at a big company or no?
Small company, self-employed, just myself. And,
okay, so
and
you
kids, yeah.
you kind of had to let yourself go. You fired yourself.
So he's a contractor. And by the way, Chris Lewis is in the chat. Chris is the amazing voice on that. So thank you, bro. I appreciate you. He's a contractor. Here it is again.
So you were saying you did lose your job as a result of the vaccines?
Yep, because I just wasn't allowed in people's homes without a mask, or a lot of people would ask me, are you vaccinated?
And it was at a big company or no?
Small company, self-employed, just myself. And,
okay, so
and my
you
kids, yeah.
you kind of had to let yourself go. You fired yourself.
These are MAGA's words of wisdom.
So what did we learn there, friends? Gentleman just decided not to get, vaxxed. Customers would not allow him into his home as a small business owner. So ultimately, he ended up firing himself. Yeah. Okay. So I might suggest voting, sir, for someone who supports public education. Maybe someone who understands how science is important. Yeah, Coffee, you're right. They walk among us. They vote. Okay? Yeah, it's one thing to make fun, to have a little laughter because joy is resistance, but these people vote. And he'll be in line to vote again. He will turn up, likely in the midterms. Maybe not so much in the midterms, but for the president, he will. He'll vote. He'll go out there. So would you rather not show up or vote against someone who fired themselves? Okay. I'll leave that up to you to decide. All right. Let's get into war talk. This is first the piece about, this is the president again being asked about the deal, that he doesn't have the details of the deal. I'll read you some of the details that Iran's asking for, because they're not fucking around. And why should they, to be honest? But here's the president in the Oval yesterday talking about the deal.
Democrats in the Senate to fund all but enforcement operations of ICE, to get those TSA agents repaid and to open up the rest of the department. Would you sign that?
Well, I don't want to comment until I see the deal, but as you know, they're negotiating a deal. I guess they're getting fairly close, but I think any deal they make, I'm pretty much not happy with.
Okay, so you're telling the Senate Republicans and Democrats that you're unhappy. You're unhappy with anything. You're not going to sign it. Okay, what does that do? It does nothing. Is that the art of the deal, my guy?
And these guys came in, they wouldn't pay people. They had a deal to pay. They had to break their deal. The Democrats broke the deal that we had. It was all done. Everything was fine. And then they just said, well, we're not going to pay anymore. And they hurt our country. And at a very difficult time because, we are at, as they would say, a war. They call it a war. I call it a military operation.
Really? You call it a military operation? Is that really? Do you want to go on the record with that, sir? Because I keep the fucking receipts, you little bitch.
Country at great risk during this period of time, a period that they call a war. They call it a war. We call it a military operation.
A few moments ago. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
Uh-oh.
Well, thank you very much. These are exciting times. I think you probably want to speak about war rather than this, but this is very important. This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. I have to go back and look at the war.
Oh.
I have a lot of things happening. Thank you, Bernie. You're doing a great job.
I'm confused because he said, the non-war war.
A very successful one, like nobody's ever seen before. Hey, Venezuela was equally as successful. That was a great thing. No, The Democrats had a deal. It was a done deal. And then they said, well, we're not going to pay. And so a lot of people suffered over that and put our country in danger.
So I'm confused. Is it a non-war war? Is it a war non-war? Is it a military action non-war war? Is it Department of Military Action? Is it the Department of Excursions? Okay, can we talk about that for just a second? I mentioned this last week, but the president, it's war adjacent. Who said that? Mary, yes, war adjacent, exactly. I don't mean to laugh, but again, joy is resistance. The president has referred to this as an excursion on numerous occasions, okay? I just want to give you the exact definition of excursion because the president has referred to this a short journey or trip, especially one engaged in as a leisure activity. The president has referred to this as an excursion on numerous occasions. So is it an excursion? Now, he potentially might have meant like incursion, right? An insurgency, whatever that might be. Don't know. The Department of the 3-hour tour. We need a Gilligan's reference. Anywho, not an excursion. It's a war. The president has told us so on numerous occasions. So, my friends in MAGA, I would like you to finally just accept the fact that your no new war president has brought us to another war. Stop trying to, I say this with love. You don't need to debase yourself every single day supporting this guy. You don't. You don't have to come up on you don't have to come up on right-wing lives. You don't have to go to a live where there's 9 people on the panel and only 11 people in the live. You don't need to do that. You don't need to comment in comment sections. You don't need to put your hand up and spam the chat to defend this. You can say, maybe quietly, or you know what? You can get up in the morning when you're flexing, right? When you're preparing to go to your 60 hours a week that you work, which again is not a flex. And you can stand there and look in the mirror and have your Stuart Smalling moment and say, I've been lied to. I have been lied to. The president has lied to me. I supported him. He lied to me. He told me that my gas prices would go down. They're up to $4 a gallon. He told me that unemployment would go down. It's up. He told me that inflation would drop. It's up. He told me there'd be no new wars. It's up. He told me there would be no more corruption. There is. He told me the Doge was going to save us trillions of dollars. They didn't. He told me I was going to get a Doge check. I didn't. He told me I was going to get a tariff check. I didn't. Those are lies literally off the top of my head. You don't have to sit there. You don't have to sit there and continue to debase yourself. You don't. It's unnecessary. So why do it? And this goes back to what Geeky and I were talking about earlier, about how your support of this person is connected to culture wars. You don't want women to have equal rights. You don't want marginalized communities to exist. You don't want to fund public education. You don't want poor people to eat. You don't want to have health care. So you've sold your entire, what you have left of a soul, under a culture war umbrella because you think the president of the United States cares about you. Listen, you're not going to get picked. You're not going to go to the ballroom. Nope. You're not going to go to Mar-a-Lago. You're not going to get a tea time at Bedminster. You're not. If I ever play golf at Bedminster, I don't know why I would, but if I ever did, I would make sure I lost my ball right around Ivana's grave and take a massive fucking divot. Like a massive divot. I would anyway, but seriously, I mean, you guys have sold your soul. For what? I mean, for what? And speaking of the ballroom, speaking of the people that are funding this, I don't know if you read this, but this is a good story. A jury has found that Meta is liable in its case over child SA and exploitation on its platforms. Jury yesterday found Meta violated New Mexico law in a case accusing it of failing to warn users about the dangers of its platform and protect children from sexual predators. The jury found Meta liable on all counts, including for willfully engaging in unfair and deceptive and unconscionable trade practices, and ordered the company to pay $370 million in damages. Meta for years has faced concerns about risks to kids and teens on its platforms from parents, whistleblowers, advocates, and lawmakers. Tuesday's decision marks the first time the company has been held accountable in a jury trial for those issues. A Meta spokesperson said the company respectfully disagrees and plans to appeal the decision. New Mexico AG Raul Torres sued Meta in 2023 for allegedly creating a, quote, breeding ground for child predators on Facebook and Instagram, claims that the company denies. The jury's award was smaller than the billions in damages New Mexico had sought, but a later portion of the case to be presented directly to the judge could also force Meta to make changes to its platform and pay additional penalties. Now, are we going to get people on the right claiming, hey, this is a suppression of speech? If you care about kids, right? Interesting. This case is part of a wave of legal pressure Meta and other social media platforms are facing over the safety of young users. As jurors in New Mexico State Court delivered a verdict, jurors in Los Angeles are considering a separate case against Meta and YouTube, accusing them of intentionally creating addictive features that harmed a young woman's mental health. Social media giants are also facing hundreds of other cases from individuals, school districts, and state attorneys general, some of which are set to go to trial later this year. Closing arguments on Monday followed a 6-week trial that included testimony from Meta executives and former employees turned whistleblowers. Details from the Attorney General's undercover investigation into child sexual exploitation on Meta's platform, which led to 3 arrests, were also discussed in the courtroom. New Mexico jury was asked when deciding whether Meta willfully made false and misleading statements about the safety of its platforms or engage in unconscionable practices by knowingly designing its platform to harm young people. Quote, "We work hard to keep people safe on our platform and are clear about the challenges of identifying and removing bad actors or harmful content," the Meta spokesperson said in a statement. "We will continue to defend ourselves vigorously, and we remain confident in our record of protecting teens online." Torres called the decision, quote, "an historic victory for every child and family who has paid the price for Meta's choice to put profits over kids' safety." Meta executives knew their products harmed children, disregarded warnings from their own employees, and lied to the public about what they knew. Today, the jury joined families, educators, and child safety experts in saying enough is enough, Torres said in a statement on Tuesday. Ahead of the decision, a Meta spokesperson on Monday pointed to an earlier statement saying that the New Mexico lawsuit, quote, "makes sensationalist, irrelevant, and distracting arguments by cherry-picking select documents and disregarding the company's long-standing commitment to supporting young people." Meta attorney Kevin Huff argued in court the company has been honest with users that some bad actors and inappropriate content can slip through its safety filters. But he said 40,000 people at Meta are responsible for making Facebook and Instagram safe, and that the company invests heavily in measures to protect young users. The jury considered if Meta willfully misleads and harms kids. The New Mexico AG's office created multiple fake Facebook and Instagram profiles posing as children as part of its investigation into Meta. Those test accounts encountered sexually suggestive content and requests to share pornographic content, the suit alleges. The fake child accounts were allegedly contacted and solicited for sex by 3 New Mexico adult men who were arrested in May of 2024. 2 of the 3 men were arrested at a motel where they were allegedly believed they would be meeting a 12-year-old girl based on their conversations with decoy accounts. During the trial, the state argued that Meta failed to do enough to prevent bad actors on its platform from contacting kids. The product is very good at connecting people with interests, and if your interests are little girls, it will be really good at connecting you with little girls or boys. When we speak of the Epstein class, right, when we talk about it in terms of the rich and powerful, using whatever they can to exploit the most vulnerable, Meta's an example of that. Now, this is that line of free speech, right? This is that line. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. I don't know what the answer is. But for them to say, hey, we've got a team of 40,000 people that are out there protecting people, well, the New Mexico investigative team creates fake accounts. And lo and behold, what happens? Solicitation of minors. That led to arrests. Former Meta Vice President of Partnerships Brian Boland testified that he absolutely did not believe that safety was a priority to CEO Mark Zuckerberg and then COO Sheryl Sandberg when he left the company in 2020. Instagram head Adam Mosseri conversely testified that Meta has rolled out safety features such as teen accounts despite their negative impact on growth and engagement. The New Mexico case also raised concerns that allowing teens to use end-to-end encryption on Instagram chats, a privacy measure that blocks anyone other than the sender and receiver from viewing a conversation, could make it harder for law enforcement to catch predators. Midway through trial, Meta said it would stop supporting end-to-end encrypted messaging on Instagram later this year. Regarding the encryption decision, a Meta spokesperson told CNN that very few people were opting in to end-to-end encrypted messaging in DMs, so we're removing this option from Instagram in the coming months. Anyone who wants to keep messaging with end-to-end encryption can easily do that on WhatsApp or Signal or other places like that. A Meta spokesperson previously told CNN that child exploitation is a horrific crime, and we've spent years building technology to combat it. Meta's head of child safety policy, Ravi Sinha, testified about the company's work. The company's lawyers questioned the legitimacy of the New Mexico investigation, accusing the Attorney General's office of using hacked or stolen accounts and photos of real, non-consenting children to lure predators. What? The whole point is they created these accounts. Meta said they had protections in these accounts. Apparently not. So, pay attention to what your kids are doing, friends. That's all I can tell you. Pay attention. All right, let me check here real quick. 10:16 Eastern Time. Where are your kids? Hopefully they're at school. Okay. Everybody keep tapping, please. See if we can get that gifting goal taken care of. Let's see if we can get to 400K likes today. That'd be great. Good morning, friend. How are you today?
Hey, friend. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Not bad. What's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to hop up here real quick. Anytime you talk about New Mexico, I have to come up because, you know, that's my space.
Yeah.
And so this trial actually happened here in Santa Fe, and several months ago.
By the way, love Santa Fe. Love it.
I know you do. If you ever roll through, I got some good grub to take you to for sure.
Fair enough. Deal.
So months ago I was actually summoned for jury duty, and it's not the first time I've been summoned for jury duty, but this one in particular had like a 9-page questionnaire, and it was for this trial. And so I had to answer the questionnaire, and that was like a pre-screening for the jury. And it was a lot of questions about how I felt about Meta, how I felt about Instagram or Facebook specifically, and if I had ever had any like experience with an unsafe situation on Facebook. And I actually had, not for myself, but for my niece. And so I was still actually summoned to the jury selection process. It was an 8-hour day. They split us into 2 groups of 50 people. And obviously I wasn't chosen because I'm far too anti-billionaire and child exploitation. Obviously,
you're one of those radicals.
I was way too woke for them. So gotcha. I obviously wasn't chosen, but it's been kind of a circus down at our First Judicial District Courthouse. It was 45 days. The trial was 45 days long. And I'm proud of my state. I'm proud of our AG for doing that. And we're doing some really good things, here in New Mexico, with the Zora Ranch investigation. Our governor, our last legislative session was pretty successful in stopping ICE facilities from contracting with private contractors here or any state contractors, as well as universal childcare for parents and children, to try to get parents into the workforce. So we've been doing some really good things that probably slide under the radar based on everything else that's happening, but we hear about it here locally a lot. And so I'm proud of our state, and
should be.
I think that showing that it's possible, these things are possible as far as the legislation that's been passed that I mentioned. And I'm hoping to see other state and AGs come down on Meta. I think that it's necessary and it's needed. My niece fell into a little rabbit hole very easily, very, very easily. And there's not those protections on there. So, my kids and grandkids don't get to be on that app, but there's other apps, there's other video games. And just as a warning to parents and grandparents out there, there's other video games where there is a network of communication and different ways to private message people. And there's a lot of videos on this app that talk about Minecraft and what's that other game that's pretty scary?
Roblox.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one. That are dangerous for young people. So keep an eye out. I love what you do. I love your tour. I
appreciate it.
I listen every morning. Love you, man. Have a good one.
Friend. Appreciate you. You too. Be safe out there.
All right, you too.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it brings us back to the first Trump administration when they, there was some changes that were requested by the Trump administration because Chrissy Teigen made this post on X calling the president of the United States a pussy-ass bitch. That was her statement. It was then read by a member of Congress so that it could go into the congressional record. The Trump administration got all up in their shit, wanted the post pulled down. Then that led to the Biden administration contacting Meta. I think it was Facebook at the time still. It might have been Meta. I'm not sure when the conversion happened. Said, listen, what is your policy on misinformation regarding healthcare, vaccines, et cetera? And then that turned into the right-wing talking point that the Biden administration was attempting to suppress speech. No, it's not what they were doing. What did Meta end up doing? They ended up changing some of their policy on medical misinformation, right? So here we sit now. Meta's being sued because of the environment, and they lost. $375 million and more to come. And they lost because their platform promoted, I'm not going to say intentionally, the jury then ruled, though, that their platform allowed for predatory behavior. They tested the system. Meta said, we've got the system. It's built. We're good. Bad actors might slip through. Well, they being the AG investigating this, this platform, created fake accounts. And what ended up happening? Sure enough, leads to arrests. So this free speech debate, right? I know I said yesterday, I am working on my own, a revised constitution. I'm only going to focus on the Bill of Rights. I'm not going to go too far, but I'm about halfway through. And I went back and I read it last night. I'm like, damn, whew, little radical, but when I'm done, I'll read it with you guys and I'll post it on my Substack. Here's where we sit. I firmly believe in free speech. I do think that needs to be some restrictions. Like, I think hate speech is one of those things. Then the question is, who's the arbiter, right? We can determine what that would look like, but here's where we sit now. Meta's being sued. Don't forget, we have recently where a father of a school shooting perpetrator was found liable, held responsible, criminally held responsible, those kinds of things. So are we starting to see a change? Maybe. I don't think hate speech should be protected either, Van. The question is, how do we do it? Right? That's the question. And who determines if something is hateful? Like if I'm out in public, or if I'm out in public and somebody calls me, hey, you're a fucking asshole, I hope you get run over by a bulldozer. Is that hate speech? I don't know. That's the line, right? So We'll watch that story because I think it could become. Yeah, I love how Denmark did it. Exactly, Sinjay. If you're in the chat, if you're here, I would love for you to come up and request and tell us about how that. I think I might have seen you in here. If not, I'd like to hear your perspective on that, because how it's addressed is something that I'd like to see for the future of this new United States and how we handle these kinds of things. And what does that look like without over policing it, I guess, but I would like to see it look different than it does. Anyway. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about exactly sustaining, how a pastor calling for the death of Tellerico. Exactly. It's a great example. They'll try to say, well, it's the Bible said so. Anyway. Okay. So the alleged deal that the Trump administration claims it has. Well, actually, before I get into that, I got to talk about California for a second. So California, I need you guys to do something for me. The way that the California election process works for the primary, which comes up on June, the people who are leading in the polls, the top two, whomever they are going to be the candidates for the general. Right now, the two leading candidates are both Republicans. They are, I have the names for you. They are Steve Hilton, former Fox News commentator and advisor to the UK Prime Minister David Cameron, and Chris Bianco. They're both Republicans. The problem is there are so many Democrats that are in the primary that it's diluting their vote. So if that does not change, then California is going to have a Republican governor. Californians, Mr. Stewart, Californians, I need you to do something for me. You need to be getting on the phone with Katie Porter, with Eric Swalwell, with Tom Steyer, with Xavier Becerra, Antonio Villaraigosa, Betty Yee, Tony Thurmond, Matt Mahan, and suggest that many of them drop out of the race right now. Because if those numbers track, Sinjay, I'm going to have you come up. Please request it and come on up. I want to talk to you about something if you don't mind. If you're free, only if you're free. I need people to pay attention. California, do you want a Republican governor? And if the answer is no, then some people have to drop out of this race. Because as it sits right now, they're dividing the voting. They're dividing the polling. They're dividing it. So Katie Porter, Eric Swalwell are the front runners. One of them has got to get into that top two, because if they don't, then California is going to have a Republican governor. It's just that simple. So we sent up the bat signal, and here you are. Thank you for joining. I didn't catch you at a bad time.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I was procrastinating. So everything's good.
Good. Well, thank you for being here. So we were talking briefly, we were talking about how trying to address, so there's a lawsuit that Meta, Facebook just got sued, and they lost, having to do with their platform created an unsafe environment for children and teens. And the New Mexico government, the state of New Mexico, you probably heard about it, they sued them and they won. They won the suit, so Meta has to pay $375 million. And then that turned into the free speech debate. And I've been on your lives before, and we've talked about this too offline, about how Denmark addresses hate speech. Would you mind just talking about that a little bit for people so folks can understand? And friends, if you don't follow Sinjay, please do.
Oh, thank you. Well, we have a law in Denmark that racism and hate speech is illegal. So, and it's quite a new one. So it's always been somewhat between the lines that it's not allowed to say anything racist in the public sphere. But with the world changing as it is, hate speech is getting more and more accepted. A new law was put in place, and we're actually right now learning what the limits are and how to manage it and still have free speech. So it's actually quite interesting.
What do you know about it? Like, what can you tell us? Because my question is, who determines if something is hateful?
The courts do. So basically, we have an example. So a guy made a webpage where he put up racist jokes, and anti-Semitic jokes and all that. He did, and it was trialed. He was charged with racism, and it was trialed, and they tested out, and they ended up saying that that was not illegal because he did not say it in a like he didn't make the jokes. He didn't invent the jokes. So he was creating a platform, and he actually did warn people to go when they went into the webpage that this was offensive. So, but another one where it's actually been charged was the Danish Prime Minister has been in a lot of situations where she has been hate speech, there's been said a lot of weird things about her. So you can say it at home, but if you do a public show of this hate speech, then you will be charged. So these guys made a doll that was like depicting her and put it on fire in public space, which is hate speech. We also have someone who lit fire to the Quran in a public space. That's illegal in Denmark as well, because that's hate. That's bigotry, isn't that when it's against religion? Bigotry? Yes, thank you. So that's illegal as well. So right now we're finding the limits, but basically it is when it is meant to harm. So if it's publicly displayed and meant to harm, it is illegal.
Publicly displayed and meant to harm. So the meant to harm part, I think, is going to be the challenge to enforce, correct?
Yes. Yes. And that's why we right now, I can't give you a, this is how it works, because it is being tested in trials right now. We are testing out how these judgments are going to be. I can see if I can find the wording in the law.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
because I'm curious about it. I mean, sure. Again, thank you for joining us. If you guys don't follow Sinjay, please do. I get it. And somebody said this in the chat about the slippery slope about policing speech. I get it. That's kind of why we're talking about it, though. But if we can address some of these things that are blatantly hateful, do we want those under the umbrella of free speech? I would say no. But how do we enforce it, and who's the arbiter? That's my biggest thing. And from what you described, it's the court. The courts would decide. But somebody's going to have to make a determination if somebody says, hey, I used the N-word, but I didn't intend it to harm someone. Is that going to be enough to excuse it? I don't know.
Well, I am finding the... thank you. I just had someone sending. Okay, so the wording of the paragraph. There it is. Anyone who publicly or with the intention of dissemination to a wider group makes a statement or other communication by which a group of persons is threatened, insulted, or degraded because of their race, skin color, national or ethnic origin, religious belief, disability, or because of the sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or gender characteristics of the group in question, is punished with a fine or imprisonment for up to 2 years. Point 2, in determining the punishment, it shall be considered an aggravating factor if the act had characteristics of propaganda. So that is the one, that's the one we're discussing right now. Yeah.
So it's going to come down to, I think somebody said this in the chat, impact versus intent. Is this do you know, are there other I don't mean to put you on the spot. You are Europe to us, Sinjay, so take that on.
Of course. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Do you know if there are any other European countries that have similar language in their constitution about how to police hate speech?
Oh, Germany, definitely. Germany is the prime example. They are extremely harsh when it comes to, but I don't know if there's any other countries. I think we all have something similar as the one that we have, especially with the world how it is right now. But I am not sure about it. But Germany is definitely the prime example. Like anything Nazi is illegal by punishment, by like prison, imprisonment.
Got it. Yeah. So in your case, so is this a change to your constitution?
No, because our constitution only talks about our democracy. So our constitution is the foundation of the country. This is where we made ourselves into a monarchy with the democratic parliament. That's basically our grundlov. So this is an addition. We don't change, like we don't
amend like we do.
No, we don't. That's too much. Like the only mending, like we've had one mending, which is that you can become queen if you're a woman. That's that's what our constitution more consists of. But for us, international law is law. So
got it.
This is how we do it. When you add a new law, this is like, that's the job of our parliament to create these laws. And it doesn't have to be a constitutional right. So they will work around, like freedom of speech is in our constitution, but this is a change. So that's fine. Like it doesn't.
It's not.
What? Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, continue.
I was going to say, so it's not amending the Constitution, it's just revising a law, or maybe better said a better way, clarification around what is considered hate speech that is not protected by free speech that's in your Constitution.
Yes.
Is that right?
Exactly, because free speech, like the intent of free speech is not the intent of, it's not without, what is it called? Responsibility. So like, yes. So you can, free speech is about being able to criticize government, about being able to say what you want, have freedom of religion, these things. It's not about taking other people down. And I think that's where we misunderstand free speech sometimes. Like saying that someone is bad is not free speech, but having an argument and not being imprisoned by talking your policies, that's free speech.
So where does it sit? Like you said, it's still being debated. Is this now law, or where does it sit in your? It's law now.
It's law, yeah. But every law, like I don't know what's called in English, but when you make a new law, you have to figure out how the sentence is. Like so, the judicial, that word,
judiciary. Yeah, gotcha.
Thank you.
Judges. Yeah, sure.
Judges.
Gotcha.
They will have to figure out how to implement and how to read the law. That's how it always works, you know. Like we make the law and then we figure out how will we carry out the law. That's what the three branches of government is. So we have the parliament makes a law and then we put it into the judge system and then they will figure out how this will be carried out. Precedents, yes. They will create precedents, yes.
I just sent Paige an invite. Maybe she can join if possible. Paige, I know you've spent some time in Germany, because what I want to do now, since we have this opportunity, again, thank you for being here for this. Of course. It's really important because you said you talked about Germany.
Spoken English today, so I'm a little bit confused. Yes.
Hi, Paige. Thanks for coming up last minute. I appreciate you. How are you today? You good?
Good.
So I know you spent some time in Germany. I know you lived there for I'm not sure how long, but when Sinjay talked about what the hate speech laws, or I don't want to say anti-free speech, but it seems like more hate speech laws. Can you unpack that a little bit so people understand? The reason I want to do this, friends, is because I think it's something that we have to address. It's going to be complicated under our Constitution because of freedom of speech. Who's the arbiter? But I would, if you wouldn't mind, Paige, if you can go back into your massive brain and unpack that chapter about hate speech laws in Germany, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much like Sanjay said, like when it comes specifically to Schnazi rhetoric, and also clothing, you can't wear a hat with a Schnazi symbol or motto or anything like that. Which they kind of fell into a little bit of an area or time period where there was kind of a neo-Nazi, especially in the north, like in Berlin, with like a revival of punk. And so somehow these subcultures like intersect, and there were like some issues with it. Generally today, there's not there like these days. No, like people aren't doing that. Although, I mean, what is the saying? When America catches a cold, no, when America sneezes, Europe catches a cold, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hate that.
So there is the ADF, like that's the Schnazi group. I'm just gonna call it like that because it's how I see them. They are the very far right.
That's the
Uh,
party that Elon supported, right, Paige?
yeah,
RDF,
yeah, ADF, yeah,
party.
ADF, yeah. He supports
AfD,
them.
sorry.
They oh, AfD, yeah. Sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm translating in my head now. Yeah, so like in fact, one of their leaders repeated a Schnazi. He's a former leader. Like he repeated a Schnazi rhetoric, and kind of like a "Make America" or "Make Germany Great Again" or something like that. I think it was the Über alles. I think that was the one that it was saying, and he got penalized.
Deutschland.
Yeah, Deutschland über alles. I think I don't. I just want to make sure that I'm like correct exactly.
That wasn't
But
what he said. It was probably one of the songs. We've had it going on in Europe or in Denmark as well. So there's a
oh, it was in a
Schnazi
speech.
song.
It wasn't
Erica.
like a full song. It was in his speech. I'll check. I'll double check in 2 seconds. And
Yeah.
anyway, he did get penalized, and they removed him. And now they think, I think that's sort of kind of like how the woman that doesn't even live in Germany. She lives in Switzerland. That is like part of that. Like she's like the leader of that. So he did get in trouble. Sorry, go ahead.
I know this. That's okay. I know that Sanjay said she wants to add something. Somebody in the chat asked, and I have the same question since I'm tatted. Would tattoos be treated the same way that clothing is?
That's interesting. I don't think in Germany, Sanjay, like that a tattooist that has a professional shop would actually do that. I think
It's illegal.
because they know.
It's
Yeah,
illegal to do
do it. Yeah.
Nazi tattoos, not Shazi things.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It is in
Sanjay,
Denmark as well.
You had something you wanted to add.
Now that I know what the topic is about, I was just researching a little bit. So just so I could kind of give you where it all comes from. So basically the whole idea of the racism laws comes from the European Convention on Human Rights, something called Article 10. And the principle is that speech can be limited. So free speech can be limited. It's more of like that here in Europe, we protect social peace and minority groups, while in the US, it's more maximal freedom of speech. So that's kind of the difference. But the Article 10 protects freedom of expression, but it allows governments to limit speech when it's necessary for public safety, protection of reputation, prevention of disorder or crime, protection of minority groups. So freedom of speech exists, but it's not absolute in Europe. That's kind of the whole headline. It is free expression versus protection from harm. And there's actually a EU legislation on anti-racism. There's a EU framework decision on racism and xenophobia from 2008. It requires all EU member states to criminalize incitements to violence or hatred, publicly insulting or degrading groups based on race, ethnicity, religion, or nationality, Holocaust denial or trivialization, and genocide denial. So it focuses on incitement and public harm. So yeah, that's actually a European framework.
That's interesting. Because we have the hate crime like elevator when it comes to crimes against protected classes. but we don't address it on the front end. We address it potentially on the back end. Paige, I think you were doing some research. Something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was double checking because I'm a stickler for like quoting people. I
Yes,
don't like
you are.
misquoting.
That's what I like about you. So thank you for doing that.
I don't like misquoting people. So yeah, it was
Not
Deutschland
horrible.
über alles, Germany over everything, and and I apologize because that is a Schnazi, that is pure Schnazi rhetoric. I hate saying it in any language. It was Bjorn Höcke, and he got a 13,000 euro fine for saying that. It happened at a rally in 2021. The trial happened in 2024. But Sinjay, you know what European country, because I also lived in Belgium, right? I do not think that the Netherlands, I do not think they will ever like really go into having proactive, smart hate speech laws, because I've lived right on the border of Belgium and the Netherlands. I used to ride my bike on Sundays. I'd just ride my bike over into the Netherlands. And
you are a radical.
I am an absolute radical. I think that they're the country of like say if you look at France, Belgium, Spain, or whatever, I think that they're the ones, interestingly enough, they're a little too radical. They're a little too free, right? In a way where they're just like, no, like no hate speech. That's like, it's like free speech for absolutely everything. I fear that because they do have
the Netherlands.
and they do have a neo-Nazi issue. They have immigration tensions. In fact, in Dutch, like they even for this is in Belgium as well, unfortunately. They even create slurs for particular like, and they meaning racist, not all. Like, please, I'm not saying all Dutch people, all Belgians.
we got you.
They even create slurs for like people from particular immigrants from particular areas, like Moroccans. They call them apes. They have like a word in Dutch for that.
I just wanted to add something, Paige, because they do have racism laws. So in the Netherlands, they do have laws against, they are limiting freedom of speech on the same basis as the rest of Europe is.
Good.
We have the same experience in certain areas in Denmark, and especially if you go to certain areas, of course, there will be people like, I am in no way saying that this is a perfect one. Like of course, there are situations where it doesn't work and there will always be hate. But I think for me, the difference why I'm advocating that there should be some kind of limitation to freedom of speech is because if there is no law against it, there is also no limitations. Like we have to have, I know it still happens, but I still think that we need some kind of limit and some kind of opportunity for the politicians to do something about it. I know that they're not doing anything. Like we also have politicians here in Denmark who are blatantly racist, as far as I would say. I would say that they are threatening Muslims and they are being absolutely horrible people. And they're doing it publicly. But there is a limitation. You know, there is like people are being charged with racism and they are being charged with hate speech. It is difficult, but I think even in the Netherlands, they do have limitations to what they can say.
I think it's going to be really interesting to watch because, you know, I don't, the appetite here, you know, maybe not in my lifetime when they address something like that, but I think the more and more progressive politics, as we potentially swing the pendulum a little bit more towards the matriarchy, maybe it balances out at egalitarianism somewhere, maybe we can address these things. Because when I'm in the new constitution that I'm writing in my spare time, I address this. So I want to, first of all, thank you both for spending some time and thank you for responding to the bat signal, Sinjay and Paige. For you.
Anytime.
Thank you both. Is there anything else either one of you would like to add in closing? So final thoughts from Sinjay, why don't you go first?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. As always, an absolute pleasure. And well, I think I wanted to add something that it says here on this article that I found. It says speech can destroy democratic societies if it spreads hatred or violence. I think that's the most important thing that we can take out of anything, is that we have seen the rise of fascism, we've seen the Nazi propaganda, and we've seen a lot of ethnic violence in Europe. So extremist speech is a potential threat to all democracy itself. We know that. So I just want to say that for everyone. But thank you for having me. Appreciate you, Steve.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here.
I think
appreciate
that's
you. Take care.
perfectly said. I think we should end on like I'll go on that because that I totally agree. I think that in America we have an arrogance of this individualism of like, no, just say whatever you want, and if your feelings, you're just a snowflake and things like that. Where it's like, no, sorry, like you should have, there should be consequences when harm is done. And I think what hopefully what we can see coming from Europe, how they like how their laws, like once precedence is set, and we can maybe adopt that. It's so funny because ironically, and this was an actual live that I came across the other morning. It was like 8:00 in the morning. It was Americans with like very Nordic kind of stuff in the background. They're just cosplaying Vikings. They watch that TV show and they're just like, that's me. Although that's not my heritage. That's me. I'm all of a sudden I'm a Viking. Hi, how's everybody doing? And it said, stop race mixing. That was the title on the background on this app.
Wow.
And they were very clear with what their messaging was. They feel that everybody who isn't white should be taken out of America for whatever, like by any means necessary, whatever. It was very extreme. I sat and I watched, just to like in awe. And I really wanted to like jump on and you know how I am, Steve. I wanted to get on this panel and just go, it's so funny that you guys are sitting there and you want to be Nordic for some reason, because at the same time you won't accept their lifestyle. You don't like things that they have, like universal health care and all these kinds of things.
Yeah, weird, right?
But
they just like the broadsword. They just like the broadsword in the
you saw the TV show Vikings and you went off of it. It's just ironic that we have people in America that get into this kind of genre. It's very strange. And at the same time, you're like,
it's like, well, they're into the graping and the pillaging, but not the universal health care.
Yeah, exactly. So, but thank you for having me up. I appreciate it.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate you very much. Guys, you too. If you guys don't follow Paige and Sanjay, please do so. Thanks for being here on the short notice. I appreciate you. Have a good day. Be safe out there. I love that discussion, and I think it's something that we have to discuss. Again, I think the challenge that we have here. Oh, we have a re-request. Something you might have forgotten to tell. Is there something you forgot to share with us that you wanted to kind of close the loop on?
You talked about Vikings. Paige said something about Vikings, so I had to come up and say stuff about it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead. Feel free. Feel free.
It's because I'm so sad that like nationalists, like white nationalists, are stealing our history and our culture. And I need to make things very clear. Viking was a job. Vikings were matriarchal. Viking women owned the land. Viking women, because the men were gone all the time, women were the bosses, first of all. Second of all, there were black Vikings. There were Vikings from all over the world. And second of all, Vikings loved other countries and like they were traders. So
there is that. That is very, very, very true. But I think to Paige's points, and Jay, it's just the cosplay alpha, Like I can carry my sword in public, and yeah. Thank you for
It's
that
so
history
sad.
lesson on
It's because I see people on this app like with names or symbols from our ancestry, like our history here in Scandinavia, and they're being attacked for being Nazis or other things. And it just makes me really sad. Like we still have people here who are a part of that culture still and believe in that like Ase belief. And they're being attacked here on this app for being Nazis. And I just wanted to make sure, like, it's also our history. It's our culture. Don't steal it to everyone. I don't know. Like you guys, obviously you don't have people like that in here. So, but.
Well, I wouldn't say that. They do sneak in on occasion, but thank you for that clarification,
Thank
friend.
you.
I appreciate
Thank
you very much. And thanks
you.
again for jumping in. You got it. Talk to you later. Be safe.
Bye. You too.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I love these conversations. And thank you, Paige and Sanjay. Thank you both. Got a couple of people have requested, and I'll bring some more folks up, and we'll continue our conversation. I've got a few more things I want to cover, but this is important because this is kind of a big issue we have here, and how we address it, I don't know. I'd like to think. How do I want to say this? Going back to what Bernie had said earlier, the culture war divide. Someone who we had these conversations. I'll just be real. When we accuse people of being racist, they don't think that what they're being accused of is racist, likely because they're racist. So we have conversations regarding the imagery of Barack and Michelle Obama on the True Social post the president put out, depicting them as monkeys. Now, I've challenged people on that to say that's obviously racist, and their claim is they don't think it's racist. A racist wouldn't think that's racist, right? So how do we find the line? Who is the arbiter? That's the question. I mean, I would like to think we could all agree that hate speech has no place in a free society. Hate speech. Free society. Who determines that? If it's the court, then that's problematic in our country because we have a court system that is, I don't know, I don't like, part of my new constitution, I don't like the fact that judges are appointed. I would prefer that they're elected. So I think that is something that we could potentially address going forward. I don't know. We have to figure it out because it's just so unnecessary in a free society. And I love the fact that European countries, and thank you, Paige and Sanjay again, Belgium and the Netherlands and Denmark and others address it because they see how bad it is. Yeah, you don't like elected judges, Chris? Yeah, I think it's a problem though. We have to address it because if we're just going to be going through these appointments of especially federal judges, that's an appointment for life. Maybe the compromise is that there's term limits across the entire judiciary. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Thank you guys for letting me go down that particular road. All right. A few other things here. As we're discussing free speech. We were talking about California before we shifted gears. So California, you guys have a problem on your hands because right now, because there are so many Democrats vying for the nomination to be the governor, which is great, but it's getting to be go time here. Because if things stay the way they are, you're not going to be able to elect a Democratic governor. So you need to be getting on the phone. Whether it's Eric Swalwell seems to be the front runner. He's pulling a couple of points above. So it's Katie Porter, Eric Swalwell, and Tom Steyer. One of them is going to have to drop out, and then everybody else below that is going to have to drop out too. That's just the way it goes. Take one for the team, friends. I fully advocate for an aggressive primary, but if it stays the way it is, then guess what? You're going to have a Republican. When was the last time you had a Republican? I'll be back. Get in the chopper. Get in the chopper and vote. Yes, something to that effect. Okay. Let's do a couple other things here. Did I cover that? All right, we're going to talk about the Iran peace deal that the president thinks that there is no deal or that he seems to be unaware of. Here you go. This is some sound from that crazy presser he did yesterday.
A tremendous success, as you know, in Iran. We had one in Venezuela, and now we're having one in Iran. They have no Navy left. They have no Air Force left. They have no anti-aircraft equipment left, no radar left, no leaders left. The leaders are all gone. Nobody knows who to talk to. But we're actually talking to the right people, and they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal.
What?
And we'll see what happens. I want to thank Pete Hegseth. The job you're doing over there is really incredible. You and the general and all of the other generals and colonels and captains and majors and everybody else, right? It's a perfect, amazing thing. We make the best military equipment in the world. Now we're going to make it faster. We want to get it faster, but we make the best in the world. We're doing a job.
What? What? So here's another little sound on that topic, and then we're going to get into the actual deal. He's talking about regime change. Okay. Here you go.
Regime change. You know, this is a change in the regime because the leaders are all very different than the ones that we started off with that created all those problems. So this was, I think we can say, Jason, this is regime change, right?
Yeah, Trump is absolutely correct. This is regime change because the first guy was an 86-year-old named Khamenei, and the new guy is a 56-year-old named Khamenei. Sounds regime changey to me.
The president is sundowning. That's an understatement. Here's another example of this top person thing that he was saying. He's standing outside of Air Force One. He's asked a question about, who are you talking to?
A top person. Don't forget, we're dealing with the man who I believe is the most respected and the leader.
Mr. President,
Again.
Mr. President, I know you've deployed.
Because I don't want him to be killed.
With U.S. President Donald Trump claiming that America is speaking to Iran, the big question is, who might they be speaking to? One name that keeps popping up is Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. He's definitely one of the strongest figure in the current Iranian power structure. On paper, he's the Speaker of Iran's parliament. He was voted to that position in 2020, but in reality, he is an extremely strong power broker in Iran. He's a political hardliner, a conservative. He's also a former military official as well, and he's certainly someone who's very much respected by the conservatives and by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. One of the big claims to fame of Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf is that he himself actually piloted a civilian airliner into Beirut in 2024 as the Israelis said no civilian airliners were allowed to land there. So he's certainly someone who is known for a good degree of courage. He's also someone who's known as being able to make deals within the Iranian power structure as well. I met Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf on two occasions, once in 2020 when he was running political office, and then just a couple of months ago as Speaker of Iran's parliament when we interviewed him in Tehran. Even back then, he was threatening the United States and also projecting that very hard line. And Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf has also vehemently denied being in contact with the United States, instead saying that the Iranians have no interest in negotiations and will continue their military operations.
Okay, so the president making all these things, claims that the Iranian government wants to end this. Well, not according to them, because they have, thank you, that's cool. They have some specific requests. These are the things that Iran has asked for. Sanctions relief, top priority. Now I want people to think about this for a second, okay? I want people to really, really think about this. This is how pitiful our president is. Part of the JCPOA, right, was Iran to reduce their capacity and their enrichment capabilities in an attempt to have some sanctions lifted. Okay? That was negotiations. Well done. Well done on behalf of the Obama administration. The president, our president, current president, was not happy, pulled aside the JCPOA. Iran went ahead and enriched their uranium, as we know. What the president wants to do now is remove their sanctions. So think about this. The argument was that Iran being the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, I would argue that that's actually the United States. Different conversation for a different time. Anyway, part of the reason that you put sanctions on them so that they could not fund these proxies, whether it be the Houthis, whether it be Hezbollah, the H group, and others. So when you're in a war with them now, do you want to remove the sanctions so they have more access to money? Make that make sense. All right, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. Anywho, before I get into more of this topic, let's bring up Chris. So we can all show Chris some love. Chris does all of our sounders on our show. He does our intro. He does our Facts After Dark stuff. He does Inside the Minds of MAGA. That handsome gentleman right there is the voice of our show. So welcome, my friend. Glad you're here. Good to see you. What's on your mind?
Hey now.
Hey now.
So let me get this straight. Old Donnie gets together with Netanyahu like Butch and Sundance and decide they're going to shoot their way out of their troubles with their backs to the cliff. And then they realize that the only way out of it is to jump off the cliff and let the river of war wash them to relative safety.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. Except, I mean, I get it. I mean, he doesn't want to. He wants to make sure we don't remember the Epstein files, and Netanyahu don't want to answer questions about why he took 13 hours to respond to October 7th and the rabbit hole that goes down.
Indeed.
But basically, we're fighting a war in the Middle East again against somebody we already tried regime change against in 1952.
Correct.
And we saw how that turned out up till today.
Not so good.
All over again. And all we've managed to do is level huge parts of this country, martyr a bunch of people, and basically create the next generation of vest bombers. And it's been a whole lot of money, that we said we didn't have. Here's my question.
But apparently, but apparently not enough money, Chris, because Pete Kegsbeth is asking for $200 billion more. What's $200 billion between a few Christian nationalists? I mean, seriously.
Wait a minute. Didn't he just spend a whole lot of money on lobster and a piano for the Marine Commandant's house? And
yeah, but he needed that. But that was important to Chris. We don't have health care, but lobster tail is important.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, because that's a pre-deployment meal. So they must have had this plan in advance. Here's my question now. Old Donnie's sitting over there talking about he's having conversations with top men in Iran, and I'm like, but at the same time, it's the same dude, and it's the same dude. He said he had a conversation with the president of Puerto Rico. Here's my question.
Same guy.
Does the top man in Iran happen to look an awful lot like the president of Puerto Rico?
He might.
Here's my other question. He said he just got a fabulous gift, big gift. Won't tell us what the gift is. I gotta ask: was it a big wooden horse?
Could be. Could be a Trojan horse. Could be.
I mean, I don't know how to respond to it. If it is, I don't know if are you going to tell him? Are you going to tell him?
Parked right outside the Oval Office. Right on the lawn.
Maybe somebody should tell him. You going to tell him?
I'll tell him. I'll let him know.
Okay. Yeah. This is where we are. This is where we are, people. It's crazy, and it's just getting worse. And I worry because I know they can't draft my old ass back into active duty, but I do have a relative who is currently on active duty, and I work about him. And then we've got, Lord knows, I don't even know what the hell Jared's job is anymore, because anytime he shows up to open his mouth to negotiate anything, we end up in worse position.
Does he even have a job other than the grifter in chief? I mean, I'm not sure.
He shows up mysteriously in the Middle East, and between his day job negotiating with, I'm sorry, who's his partner in crime here?
Witkoff,
thank you. Between his and Witkoff's day job and whatever he does in his off hours with the Saudis, I mean, he may end up in a better position, like financially, but we as a country just end up worse off. And now they're getting ready to send J.D. Vance over there. And I'm not entirely convinced he's just not trying to get rid of him.
Possibly.
I mean, if you piss off the Iranians enough, you know what they do. You know?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Eliminate the threat, so to speak. Right?
It's just
I don't know. I know the 82nd Airborne looks like there's going to be some deployments. We have some friends in our community whose children are about to be deployed. So it's a shit show. Based on and why are we there again, Chris? Do you know why are we there? Why are we in Iran?
To keep two old dudes out of jail, so that because if they lose power, they know they're going to jail. That's
pretty much. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you being here. And again, friends, Chris is the voice of our show. That handsome face matches that sultry voice. In case you all were wondering. He's the man behind the curtain. I love you, brother. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to you later.
Oh,
peace. Oh, yeah. Peace. Oh, yeah. Well, here you go.
Welcome to Facts After Dark, a safe space to get deep and personal as we discuss adult themes and maybe even some fantasies. Because we all know the deeper, the better. Now turn down the lights, turn up the heat, and let's get spicy.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Exactly. Meow is right. Totally meow. So again, to Chris's point, right? Who none of us really know. None of us know the reason. We've never been told the reason why. We've been told lie after lie after lie. What have the Iranians asked for? Iran consistently demands lifting U.S. and international economic sanctions. This is central because sanctions have severely impacted Iran's economy. So what did we do? Our president said, oh, sure, you can go ahead and sell some oil. Yeah, no problem. Cool. In earlier tasks, Iran even offered nuclear concessions in exchange for sanction relief. Bottom line, no sanctions relief, no deal. Recognition of its nuclear rights. Iran insists on its right to enrich uranium, even if limited. It rejects zero enrichment demands from the U.S., views nuclear capability as national sovereignty and technological independence. Translation, Iran may compromise, but won't fully give up nuclear capability. I'm going to pause there because Mehdi Hassan doing some great work. He is interviewing Mohammed El Baradei, former Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, explains the lack of logic in Israel, a nuclear-armed state waging war on Iran in the name of preventing nuclear weapons. Here's the interview. It's brief.
It's about the elephant in the room. Israel, a country with nuclear weapons, is bombing Iran, a country without nuclear weapons, in order apparently to prevent nuclear weapons. You were head of the IAEA. Israel never cooperated with the IAEA, did it? Never signed the NPT, never admitted that it has nukes, even though we all know it does.
No, and this is another, a horrible inequality, lack of logic, lack of anything. I mean, Israel, who is supposed to have, according to report, 90 nuclear weapons, Mahdi.
That'd be 90. 90.
Is attacking Iran because Iran might develop nuclear weapon in the next 10, 20 years. And Israel has been saying that Iran is just a few weeks away for the last 15 years. If you are an Arab, if you are a Muslim, if you are anywhere, how do you see that to be an illogical, equal system? It's not sustainable.
When you were head of the IAEA, Mohammed, what did you try and do about Israel's nuclear weapons? Did you do anything about it? Did you try and sound the alarm?
Of course, we had no jurisdiction to investigate Israel at that time, but I had on many occasions spoke to that issue when I was a Director General. We still organize, at least the IAEA, organize a meeting aimed to establish a Middle East free from weapon of mass destruction, which is the only way to do it. But of course, it's a dead-end street because neither the Israelis nor the American, I must say also neither the Western countries are supporting. I mean, it's all lip service. You can't treat the South the way it is being treated. You can't. say there is no international law except for you.
Yes.
But for us, it's only our morality.
So who again is the threat? Think about this, right? Think about this. 90, according to some reports. Although the IAEA has not always been allowed into the I country's nuclear facilities. But for some reason, the threat is Iran. Okay. Just want to make sure, just wanted to clarify that. So again, recognition of Iran's nuclear rights. Iran insists its rights to enrich uranium, even if limited. I am only reporting, I'm already seeing the chirping, I am only reporting on what Iran is asking for. It's okay, MAGA. It's okay. You don't have to freak out. Find something, find a hobby, go touch some grass, right? Maybe have some tea. It rejects the zero enrichment demands from the U.S. and it views nuclear capability as national sovereignty, technological independence. Their threat, the country that's been threatening them, has 90 nukes pointed at them. Iran may compromise, but won't fully give up nuclear capability. No limits on missiles. This is another one of their demands, or very minimal ones. Iran refuses to restrict its ballistic missile program. Missiles are seen as a key deterrent against Israel and the U.S. Security guarantees. Iran wants a formal end to hostilities and a guarantee the U.S. and Israel won't attack again. If Iran distrusts past agreements, they were allowed by sanctions or strikes. This has happened before. Okay? U.S. military pullback in the region. Reported demands include closing all U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf and then reducing U.S. military presence nearby. This is considered very unlikely to be accepted by the United States. This is all reported by the Wall Street Journal and by Reuters. Iran has demanded compensation for recent attacks and or damages to the tune of billions of dollars. Also viewed by U.S. officials as unrealistic. Control or influence over the Strait of Hormuz. Some reports say Iran wants greater control over shipping or even tolls on ships from certain countries. What Iran might be willing to give up in return. Not all demands are rigid. There are signs of flexibility. They could limit or dilute enriched uranium. They might allow for international inspections. Again, we had that under the JCPOA. We had that. It was there. It was working. They have hinted that not pursuing nuclear weapons, but depending on the terms, they will not accept full dismantling. That's the U.S.'s position. And they will not accept a total missile limit. So again, U.S. wants to end their nuclear enrichment. Iran says we're going to keep it. Limit missiles. Iran says we're going to keep our missile program. U.S. wants a reduced regional influence. Iran wants to maintain its regional influence. And then the U.S. wants inspectors and restrictions. And then Iran says, sure, but you're going to lift the sanctions first. So when the president said that there's a deal, there wasn't a deal. When the president went out last week and said, or whenever it was over the weekend, and said, we are now at we're going to pause hostility for 5 days. 5 minutes before that statement was a massive trade. $1.5 billion. Somebody enriched themselves. Somebody. And here we sit. Here we sit. We're now in this little space, in this little vacuum, where our president is sundowning, completely incompetent, being led by a bunch of Christian nationalists, people that are on the Epstein list, people that are enriching themselves to the tune of millions, if not billions of dollars. Innocent loss of life, American service members being deployed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To what end? Doesn't give me health care. Doesn't fix our food insecurity issue. Doesn't fund public education. To what end? I mean, what the fuck? There's you can use the saber rattling all you want, MAGA chuds. Your boy is a fucking taco. Trump always chickens out. Always. Trump always chickens out. He didn't have a plan. There was never a plan. It was at Bibi's direction, plain and fucking simple. Exactly, Bunny. It's not America first. It's not even close. Not even close. You're right. Gives Iran 48 days. Iran's like, whatever. We don't give a shit. And then he extends it to 5 days, and then 5 minutes before that True Social post, a massive trade. Massive trade. Obi, are you in the chat? I have a question for you about whether or not that would be flagged by the SEC. Something like that. Or would anybody investigate it? I don't know. It's just a weird, it's not a coincidence. It happened. Well, they're going to try to claim it was an incident. I'm sorry. What's the word? I don't know. I lost it right in my head. But it's like, what are we like? The same thing we talk about all the time. We want healthcare. We want education. We want food security. Coincidence. Thank you. Exactly. It's insider trading. There's no doubt. It has to be. What else could it be? It's not a coincidence. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. It's not. It's planned, timed, market manipulation, etc. Same thing happened around the tariffs. Same thing happened with timing. We saw that. Same thing happened with Howard Nutlick's company. Don't forget Howard Nutlick, Commerce Secretary. Exactly. But men and women's sports. Exactly. But illegals voting. Exactly. Howard Nutlick's company, Cantor Fitzgerald, hedged against the overturning the decision made by the Supreme Court to overturn the tariffs. They bet on it. They went into it. They went into it knowing full well that the unconstitutionality of IEEPA that the Trump administration attempted to use to roll out tariffs was going to be deemed unconstitutional. And sure enough, it was. And they made millions. Tens of millions. Their clients made tens of millions. It's all related. So on that, I'm going to play some sound from Ari Melber because he's been talking about. I've mentioned this name before. Her name is Julie K. Brown, an incredible journalist. The kind of people that we really have to protect. The kind of people that we really need to pay attention to, doing the work along with Heather Cox Richardson and others. We're talking about the financial connections now to the Epstein files and how it relates to global insecurities. Insecurity, I should say. Let me play this for you because you'll be like, yeah, that totally tracks. We have been chasing down the financial rabbit hole. I've been doing this for a long time, chasing down the rabbit hole. Howard Nutlick first. Newly referenced documents from the Jeffrey Epstein case files have brought renewed attention to Commerce Secretary Lutnick after an email revealed that he organized a private yacht dinner in the Caribbean that included 8 children ranging from ages 7 to 16. The correspondence first highlighted in recent media reporting on the Epstein files, the details Lutnick's coordination of travel and a Sunday evening dinner aboard his private yacht during a trip involving multiple families. The email was sent to Michael and Marcy Lehman, business figures, and outlined plans for the group to sail from St. Thomas to St. Bart's or Anguilla. Lutnick specifically requested the precise location for his captain and listed the children who would be present to 16-year-olds, to 14-year-olds, to 13-year-old, to 12-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So that changes his entire story again. He said initially that they lost contact. Remember, I found him gross. My wife said no more. Then he said his story was we went to the island, but we only had lunch for an hour. And then apparently this email communication allegations that they were coordinating an entire dinner. He's scheduled to appear before Congress at some point. Will he show up? He's volunteered that he would go. He said he would go. So here's a couple of things regarding the Epstein files as it relates to Iran. Shocker. This is I'll give you her name in just a second.
Unlikely that he didn't know. It's highly unlikely. I don't have the facts, but we do know that Khan, Epstein's accountant, testified that the Epstein estate settled with Jane Doe number 4, a very important Jane Doe. Jane Doe number 4's files were hidden until Trump bombed Iran and changed the subject.
What do you know?
Jane Doe's number 4 files were only found missing because of the Maxwell discovery. And people noticed that Bates stamps, numbers that lawyers use to identify documents, were missing. So we get, finally, right after bombing Iran, we get the Jane Doe number 4 files. Now, lying to the FBI is a crime. Martha Stewart went to jail for it. All people interviewed by the FBI are told that. Jane Doe number 4 alleged to the FBI that Epstein abused her when she was 13 and that Trump abused her when she was 15. Khan, Epstein's accountant, testified that the Epstein estate settled with Jane Doe number 4 for both Epstein and Trump. His lawyer tried to walk that back. Indike refused to confirm or deny that. Now, how do we get to the bottom of that? Congress passes a law invalidating all NDAs from the Trump or the Trump organization, from Epstein, any of his entities, from the estate, or based on any activities at the Epstein properties. Let's have the truth. We want the truth, no NDAs.
So there's that. That is from one of Epstein's accountants, money movers, who's got receipts about how this defense fund was funded and how it was used and who had access to it and how it became such a hidden element as we research the financial connections to the e-files. Yeah. So I got a little bit more sound for you. This is the one I wanted to play. This is Julie K. Brown doing some more investigation onto the death of Jeffrey Epstein. The reason I'm playing this for you guys now is because we've got some people want to claim, is it a stretch to say that this war was to cover up the files? I think you can logically make that comparison, that anything the administration can use to distract from the obvious is in their toolkit. So this is Ari Melvin reporting on Julie K. Brown's detailed investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's prison cell.
Stories about Jeffrey Epstein and the government response to his case, but this one is a real doozy. The Miami Herald's Julie Brown, who you might have seen on this program, has an absolute bombshell about how the Epstein files show there were an unusual number of bags of shredded documents removed from Epstein's jail just days after his death. That alone is suspicious. A corrections officer, though, was so concerned that they called the secret FBI tip line and said they'd, quote, never seen this amount of bags of shredded documents coming out to be put in the dumpster. The officer was concerned about the after-action group that came in to look into the death. Just to tell you how this works, usually investigative teams do not immediately shred documents and evidence, they collect evidence. The FBI records state that the caller found it, quote, suspicious that an after-action team charged with investigating would be shredding huge amounts of paperwork. That is an understatement. A corrections officer later wrote a memo to the FBI saying you might want to investigate why those employees are destroying records. And jails sometimes use inmates for certain physical tasks. The Herald reporting an inmate at the jail was told to take bags of shredded material to the rear gate, throw them in a dumpster. The inmate said, reportedly, quote, they're shredding everything. On top of that, the files show that there were whistleblower accounts, a letter to a judge, and U.S. attorneys' staff who also viewed this as suspicious at the very least, a potential crime or obstruction at most.
Nothing to see here, though. This goes back to when he was in jail during the first Trump administration. Bill Barr, why has he not been dragged in front of Congress to testify? But nothing to see here. Totally fine. Totally fine. It's all good. It's all good. Part of why, and I'm going to wrap here because I've got a meeting I've got to go to in a little bit, but part of why the president wants to pass the SAVE Act, because he knows full well, he doesn't give a fuck about himself, but people in his circle know that they are in deep shit by being dragged in front of Congress. I would almost bet that there are a lot of state attorneys general across the country that are ready to charge some of these people with state-related crimes. They'll find a reason to charge them. They'll find a reason to indict. They will face justice. Some of them will. Not the people who are the perpetrators of the violence, of the horrific acts against children, girls and boys, right? Women now, children and girls and boys then. Those, likely many of those are going to get away with it, which is why we're going to continue to talk about it. And then that brings me to this little bit of sound that I wanted to play for you guys too. About we're in this situation for a couple of reasons. There's two things I want to play for you. First, I'm going to talk about how if the war ended tomorrow, would things get better? Well, the answer is sadly no.
Opened back up. What's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario is that 200 days from now, or roughly around Halloween, things are back to where they used to be before the bombing started. That's how disruptive the Iran war has been. And Iran's own oil and gas productivity and output has been bombed and is now shut in. And that's true in Kuwait, in Iraq, in Qatar, and a whole other host of these Arab-producing nations that either have tankers sitting in the Strait of Hormuz or just outside that can't move, or they have these entire wells that are shut in. And the same is true for fertilizer, for urea, for helium, for all the things that our agriculture industry, our jet fuels, our semiconductors, medical imaging equipment, all that stuff is locked in. And even if the war were to end tomorrow, that would still take an estimated 200 days to get back on track. This is not a snap your fingers and it's over situation. And the president is absolutely not acknowledging that. I, for one, am not heartened to hear Vice President Vance say this won't last forever. I would like some more clarity. They started off saying, maybe 2 weeks, then we got maybe 8 weeks from Hegseth, and now we're at not forever. That's not helping.
Best case scenario, best case, 200 days, Halloween, if it ends today. I read you what Iran is asking for. The president doesn't know who the fuck he's talking to. President thinks that we've won the war. That's not a war. That is a war, but it's only a war when it's not a war. The war that's not a war, military action that's not a war. When that ends, 200 days from that point. It's probably an estimate, but it seems like it's going to track. It's going to take. Think about what happened with the supply chain disruptions post-COVID. It took months. In some places, never really recovered. It took months for us to kind of get back to normal. Same thing here. We know Europe's going to be suffering all summer because of LNG. You psyched that we won the excursion. Exactly. Everybody's psyched for their massive increase. My electricity bill went up like 65%. Like crazy. I'm like, what? Again, personal situation, but my ACA subsidy expired, so I'm paying $1,100 more a month for insurance, and my electricity bill has gone up by about $250 a month. Anybody got an extra $1,300 that they just got? No big deal. You can handle that price. You can handle that cost. That jump in cost, right? Apparently not. Apparently so. If you're MAGA, you did. I'll just get another job. I'll just pull myself up by the bootstraps. Looks like Ola Joanna timed out, sir. Anyway, I had to pause there today. So what we learned? We learned today that the Save America Act is not going to pass. We know for a fact that the president has an opportunity to end the government shutdown by agreeing to the terms that Republicans and Democrats in the Senate negotiated to fund TSA, to fund the Coast Guard, and to fund the teleporting agency. We know that. All right, we know that. So he has an opportunity to do it. He said no. So the reason that the government is shut down, the reason that airline traffic is a horrible experience right now, the reason that federal employees are not getting paid is because of the president of the United States. The reason that we are at war with Iran and American lives have been lost is because of the president of the United States. The reason the economy is hemorrhaging and we're losing jobs is because of the Republican president of the United States and the conservatives in power. And at the end of the day, it's all because Republicans had a chance in 2020, in 2021, to remove him from office, and they did not. And they did not. They had a chance. After the second impeachment connected to January 6th, they had a chance to remove him, to make him unqualified to ever run again, and they did not do it, and that's why we're here. Okay, let's go raid Johnny. Actually, Johnny's got a good crowd. Let's go raid Brett. Everybody go raid Brett, please. Brett Cross. Y'all know Brett. I love you all for being here today. So our show schedule is this. Tomorrow could be a weird day. I'm not exactly sure yet. I know we'll be live at 8. Not exactly sure how long we'll go tomorrow, but we'll be here tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Friday is going to be travel day, heading down to New York for No Kings. If you want to support the Do Something Tour in general, you can certainly do that at Factsstillmatter, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. But thank you all for being here today. Mods, you guys are awesome. Chat, thank you for allowing us to have these great conversations. Special thank you to Paige. Special thank you to Sinjay for your expertise. I appreciate you guys very much. Go raid Brett. Tell him we said hi. And we'll see you tomorrow morning.